evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the regular council meeting for the City of Nanaimo for Monday, September 11, 2017. I want to first say that we're holding this meeting on the traditional territory of the Nanaimo First Nations. The clerk tonight will be Ms. Sky Snellgrove. We do have a scheduled recess for 10 minutes at 9 p.m. Introduction of late items, please, Ms. Snellgrove.
Officers, correct wording in report to show Leah Giesbrecht is the successful candidate for the advertised position of a temporary full-time position as a bylaw enforcement officer parking patroller. Yep.
The microphone, some people are singing they can't hear.
Okay.
You're on.
Hello?
There you go.
Okay. Agenda item 9G, remedial action order, 1583 Bartlett Street. Add correspondence from Gurjeet Gill dated 2017 September 8th requesting adjournment to another date. 9K 432 Howard Avenue. Correct wording of recommendation as follows. That council receive the report titled 432 Howard Avenue dated 2017 September 11th for information and add a delegation from Leon Cake. Other business 14A Councillor Brennan re-resolution to Union of BC Municipalities. Add 3 items of correspondence in support of Councillor Brennan's term of office resolution to the Union of BC Municipalities and other proposed resolutions at the UBCM conference. And the correspondence is from Georgina Dingwell, Dawn White, and Angela Barn, dated 2017 September 8th.
Thank you. So it's the adoption of the agenda as amended is moved by Councillor Kipp and seconded by Councillor Hong. Any discussion or any other late items, Council? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favour? Opposed? Motion carries. Move the minutes. Are you moving A, B, C, and D, or A, B, and C? Thank you. Seconder? It's moved by Councillor Hong, seconded by Councillor Thorpe. Errors or omissions? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favour? Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is down at administration, and this is the advisory committee meeting minutes. Is there a mover? Move the minutes, Councillor Hong. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Armstrong. Thank you. Errors or omissions? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favour? Opposed? Motion carries. Next one, committee recommendations. First one is, there's the Finance and Audit Committee, and they're to be read by Councillor Yoakum.
Thank you. That the Finance Audit Committee recommend that Council receive quarterly sole source and single submission purchases dated August 10, 2017 for information.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Thorpe. Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favour? Opposed? Motion carries.
The Finance Audit Committee recommend that Council direct staff to, number 1, prepare and introduce a draft development cost charge bylaw based on the framework outlined in this report, and 2, review and provide a report for Council's consideration on potential expansion of the existing tax exemption programs.
Thank you very much. Is there a seconder?
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Hong. Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favour? Opposed? Motion carries.
The Finance and Audit Committee recommend that Council approve the 2017 social response and the 2017 Community Vitality Grant recommendations.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Moved by Councillor Yoakum, seconded by Councillor Armstrong. Any discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favour? Opposed? Motion carries. So, the next item is the appointment of bylaw enforcement officers. It's being introduced by Mr. Brad McRae. You're on.
This is to fill 2 current positions that we have already had, one of which is for retirement, the other one is for a long-term away period.
Thank you very much. There's a recommendation. Councillor Bestwick is moving the recommendation. Is it seconded by Councillor Thorpe? Discussion. Councillor Kipp.
Is this including the wording for 7C that the addendum includes? That's including that? Okay, thank you.
Sorry, my annotated is a little bit different, I think.
Yes, that's to show that Leah Giesbrecht is the successful candidate for the advertised position of the temporary full-time position.
Thank you. Councillor Hong?
Yes, thank you. Just with the definition of parking patroller, because I remember this discussion when we decided to bring parking in-house from Robbins Parking. And one of the reasons was the merchants downtown stated that they weren't getting polite service from Robbins. All they cared about were just ticketing and such and such. So when we had the discussion of bringing it in-house, the bylaw officers were going to do parking. They had the ability to do bylaw enforcement because Robbins couldn't. And they were supposed to be ambassadors walking downtown. My question is, are they still walking downtown, or are they just driving in their cars more than they're walking? Do we have enough staff? Have they expanded their scope of work to other areas? Because that is something I'd like to know, and what their position is going to be, because is this bylaw enforcement officer mainly for downtown, or are we throwing them throughout the entire city?
Thank you. Mr. McRae?
Yes, Your Worship, with the parking patrol officers, that is a downtown core function, and saying that there are, to use a sad term, boots on the ground, so they are walking around looking at vehicles, parking tickets, etc. We are doing a review right now of our bylaw enforcement mandates. I'm taking a look at the entire department right now as it stands, so we may have a fresh look in the coming months.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. I see no further questions. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is under Community Services, and that's 9A, Property Disposition at 2103 Bowen Road. It's to be introduced by Mr. Dale Lindsay, Director of Community Development. Mr. Lindsay.
Thank you, Your Worship. We're here this evening to seek Council's direction with respect to the disposition of 2103 Bowen Road. This is the property at the northwest corner of Bowen and Meredith, as outlined in red on the screen behind you. The property is about half an acre in size, and we have a sale agreement in principle for $350,000.
Thank you. So it's being moved by both recommendations, Councillor Hong? Okay, both recommendations are being moved by Councillor Hong, seconded by Councillor Bestwick. Discussion. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Chair. I have been asked this question, so I just want to clarify publicly that the sale price is full market assessed value. Mr. Lindsay, through the Mayor.
Your Worship, through to Councillor Thorpe, that is correct, yes.
Thank you.
Yep. All right, seeing no further speakers, we're going to call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Show Mayor McKay opposed. Next item, motion passes. Development permit application number DP 1050 at 3240 Fieldstone Way. Mr. Lindsay.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is a development permit on a piece of property in the middle of what is known as the Edgewood townhouse development. This is a former telecommunications property that is now vacant. There's a proposal of development permit before you this evening for 3 residential units. There are variances with respect to side yard setbacks and a minor variance for the overall building height.
Thank you. Is someone prepared to move the recommendation? Moved by Councillor Bestwick. Seconded by Councillor Thorpe. Discussion. Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, development permit application number DP 1063 at 2491 Kenworth Road. And Mr. Lindsay is going to introduce. Mr. Lindsay.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is a development permit is for a new building for the Nanaimo Recycling Exchange. This property is adjacent to their existing facility. As mentioned, it's for the construction of a new building. They're seeking 1 variance. It's with respect to the outside storage. The bylaw currently states that all storage on a recycling facility should be indoors within an enclosed building. In this case, they're asking for a variance to allow for limited outside storage. In staff's opinion, the architect and the design team have done an excellent job in terms of creating screens and visual buffers to negate any impact of the outside storage, and are supportive of the variance.
Thank you. Is there someone prepared to move the recommendation? So moved. Moved by Councillor Brennan, second by Councillor Thorpe. Discussion. Councillor Thorpe?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to comment that I know a number of councillors have toured this site and looked at the proposed plan and development, and I, for one, was very impressed. I think this is an excellent project, and I'm pleased to support it.
Very much. Seeing no further speakers, I'm going to call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next one, development variance permit number DVP 320 at 314 9th Street, to be introduced by Mr. Lindsay.
Sorry, thank you, Your Worship. This application is in association with, for a proposed 4-lot subdivision. The development variance permit is seeking a reduction in the front yard requirements from 15 meters to 12.74 meters. The subject property is on the screen projected behind you this evening. There's also an outline of the proposed subdivision on page 88 in your agenda.
Thank you very much. It's at this time I'd like to request that council hear anyone wishing to speak with respect to development variance permit number 320 at 314 9th Street. For the second time, anyone wishing to speak to DVP 320 at 314 9th Street? And for the third and final time, anyone wishing to speak to DVP 320 at 314 9th Street? Seeing none, is there someone prepared to move the recommendation?
Move the recommendation.
Moved by Councillor Kipp and seconded by Councillor Hong. Discussion. Councillor Meswick.
Thank you. Question to staff, please, Mr. Lindsay. At 314 9th Street is the red-lined area,
That is correct, yes.
and is the balance of that property bordering Ryan Road and Douglas Avenue? There's a home, there's an outbuildings on that property now.
The balance of the property is a separate property.
So it's separate title?
Separate title, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, seeing no more speakers, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next one is development variance permit number DVP 321 at 897 Howard Avenue, to be introduced by Mr. Lindsay.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is also a variance request, a development variance permit request in association with a subdivision application, also for lot depth variances, though this application may look familiar to some council members as it was actually approved back in the spring of 2014. Subsequently, the variance expired and a new application is required in order to proceed with the subdivision application. There's a variety of variances on the lots. The maximum variance for lot depth is from 30 meters to 28 meters.
Thank you. So I recall this one here. So so this is just because of the expiry of the original DVP application. Okay, thank you. So is someone prepared to move the motion? Oh, pardon me, I'm sorry. Thank you, Councillor Bestwick. It's requested that council hear anyone wishing to speak with respect to DVP 321 at 897 Howard. Please come down, sir. We'll need your name and full address for the record, please.
My name is Bill Beasy. My address is 885 Linwood Lane, Nanaimo.
Yep.
V9R 6P2.
Thank you.
I have copies of my presentation if council wishes to have a hard copy. So this is on behalf of residents of Linwood Lane, which is the property shown to the west of the area outlined in red. Members of council, Mayor McKay and city staff, my name is Bill Beasy, a property owner at 885 Linwood Lane, which is on the western boundary of the proposed subdivision. I am here to urge Nanaimo City Council to vote against the proposed development variance permit resolution for the following reasons. 1, the proposed variance to the minimum lot depth of 30 meters would result in a higher density than the R1 zoning allows. 2, the variance request improperly calculates the minimum lot depths for the 2 lots adjacent to our property. In other words, lots 27 and 28, as well as lot 24, thereby misrepresenting the actual lot depths. 3, the notice does not include a request for a variance to the minimum lot size of 500 square meters, yet the plan clearly shows that 20 of the 29 proposed lots would be less than the minimum size. I will briefly elaborate on these 3 points. First, increased density. At first glance, the request to reduce the minimum lot depth from 30 meters to a range of 28 to 28.6 seems innocuous. However, this change facilitates a road through the development and a higher density of lots. When we purchased our property, it was with the assumption that any development adjacent to us would occur according to the R1 zoning rules, maintaining the character of the neighborhood. Our subdivision already has higher density R6 townhouse development occurring to the north and an existing townhouse complex to the northeast that's shown just north of the development area. This variance effectively changes the zoning to R2, single dwelling residential small lot, which has a 28-meter minimum lot depth. Second, error in depth calculations. According to the definition of lot depth, in the City of Nanaimo zoning bylaw 2011 number 4500, part 5, page 10, it, quote, means the shortest distance between the center of the front lot line and the rear lot line. Now, just a reminder of geometry. The shortest distance between 2 parallel lines is a line perpendicular to the 2. The 3 lots with incorrect calculations have boundaries on the sides of the lot that are not perpendicular to the front and rear lot lines. In the case of lots 24 and 28, the application uses a measurement whose distance exceeds the shortest side boundary, which is already an exaggeration of the correct lot depth. No variance is requested for lot 27, when in fact there should be when the depth is calculated properly. All 3 of these lots are 28 meters in depth when measured correctly based on the scale drawing in the variance notice. And I've got a short table in the hard copy.
If I just stop you for a second, can you bring up page 96, please? Thank you. Carry on, sir.
So as shown on the attachment, the lots I'm questioning are the 3 in the center of the top of the development, 28, 27, 26. Actually, just 27 and 28, and then 24 on the right. So you can see they're more like a parallelogram. They don't have, it's not a square. So in order to measure the lot size properly, according to the bylaw, the perpendicular line would go from the street to the back lot, and they've actually measured the depth of these lots with a line that parallels the 2 sides of the lot, which exaggerates the depth of the lots. These errors are either a deliberate attempt to deceive those reviewing the plan or error on the part of the developer, who should be well aware of the proper calculation of lot depth as clearly stated in the bylaw. Third, omission of minimum lot size. Perhaps the most serious fault in this application is the omission of the fact that 20 of the 29 lots, or 69%, violate the R1 minimum lot size of 500 square meters. That's section 7.4.1, the table on page 8. This should have been clearly stated in the permit application because it is an important additional violation of existing zoning. It means that not only is the lot depth less than the existing zoning requirement, but the width of the majority of the lots is less than what is needed to meet the minimum lot size bylaw. As with the incorrect lot depth calculations, this omission calls into question either the integrity or competence of the developer. In conclusion, I urge Nanaimo City Council to vote against the proposed development variance permit resolution. The application effectively changes the zoning of the proposed subdivision without a proper process for a zoning change. I am not opposed to development in our neighborhood, but I would like to see it proceed according to the rules of the R1 residential zoning for this area. Respectfully submitted, Bill Beasy, on behalf of the neighboring residents.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the delegation with respect to his presentation? Councilor Beswick.
Thank you, Mr. Beasy, for your presentation. 2 questions. So is your primary issue with lots 24, 27, and 28 in so much as how the lot depth was calculated? Is it just, I think that's what you said.
Yes, on the surface, a change between 30 meters and 28 meters on average of these lot depths doesn't seem like much, but what it allows is it facilitates the degree of density that is going to result in the subdivision. So it's not so much the actual lot depth that's objectionable here, but the fact that by squeezing all of the lots onto this property, they're able to get the additional road in, and they're able to put many more lots on this property than would be allowed under R1 zoning. So it substantially changes the character of this development from what it would be if they followed the zoning regulations.
Follow up, please, if I may. So then, if by your calculation, which I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but based on your calculation, how many lots in this subdivision would be the outcome using your calculation? It's obviously something less than 30.
Yeah, it would be less. I didn't make that determination.
Okay, thank you. And my final question, you indicated that 20 of the proposed lots are smaller in size than what our small lot calls for.
That's correct.
In bylaw 4500. Is that correct? Did I connect with that correctly?
They're smaller than the R1 zoning requirement of 500 square meters. As you can see on the plan, most of them are around 450 square meters. And they certainly could have made the lots wider and met that requirement. But I found it surprising that they made no mention of that variance to the zoning in the application. It strictly talked about lot depth, when total lot size is also a related but separate and different variance to the current zoning. They could have made these lots all wider and still achieved the 500 minimum area, but they didn't because they wanted to squeeze more lots in.
Thank you.
So it wouldn't take that much of a change in the plan to meet the lot size itself.
Thank you. Councilor Brennan.
No, I don't have any. Well, I think Councillor Beswick asked the question I was going to. So.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, sir. I see no further questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Before the next delegation comes up with respect to that, I wanted to ask staff a question. And that is that the last time this one was in front of us, we discovered a thing called lot averaging on a parcel such as this, where the parent parcel is divided by the number of units. If it exceeds the 500 square meters, that's considered to be acceptable as an R1 subdivision. Am I correct?
You are correct, Your Worship. The R1 zone specifically allows for a 10% reduction in lot areas, provided that the overall average lot size is still achieved. So in this case, the subdivision application does meet the minimum lot area requirements of the zoning bylaw.
Based on the parent parcel?
Based on the number of lots and the lot area of each.
Thank you very much. Sir. Good evening. Name and address, full address for the record, please.
Mayor McKay, members of the council, my name is Tibor Jando. My wife and I, owners of our home on lot 19, 882 Linwood Lane. Further to the lot size and the concern of our neighbor Bill Bees in his presentation dealt with, we have another concern that involves the removal of a large rock outcrop by means of drilling and blasting. This is directly adjacent to our homes. In fact, it's within 30 feet of the foundation of our homes and other structures. Unfortunately, this rock outcrop, because I know when we excavated 10 years ago the base for our home, the rock outcrop extends underneath our properties. And I know a bit about drilling and blasting. And if a rock formation is not surrounded by soft dirt, sand, which would dissipate the energy created by the explosion very quickly. In a contiguous rock formation, in fact, it acts as a conduit, and therefore it transfers the energy under our homes in this situation, making the possibility very highly that we're going to suffer some damage to foundation and other structures. The rock formation, the rock outcrop occupies on that plan lots 26, 27, 28, and 29. Further to the possible damage to our homes, on our neighbor's property also, within their property line, there are huge fir and cedar trees, and the danger from the drilling and blasting and removal would expose, or in fact, quite possibly, weaken the root structure of these trees, exposing them and making them vulnerable to wind falling. So, and of course, our homes would be within reach of these trees. Therefore, our recommendation would be to alleviate any of these possible problems and damage, whether the contractor would compensate us or not, that's not here to decide. What we would recommend that in lieu of the park that is designated on that plan, at the corner of the proposed road and Howard Street, to be replaced by a natural corridor that would involve this rock outcrop. As a matter of fact, this corridor now is frequently used by people. There's a natural trail, and people from the plan on the north side of this subject development, people use this, families, kids, and workers used to access 8th Avenue or the hiking trails beyond this subject development to the south. So our request or proposal would be to replace the park that is in the area there at the cross-section of the proposed road and Howard Street with a natural corridor involving the rock outcrop in this situation, maintaining the trail access that people use and exist today, and of course this would negate the possible damage to our property, because really the possibility is very real, being so close to this huge rock outcrop which extend under our properties. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We have a question for you, sir. Councilor Brennan.
Can you say again where this rock outcropping is? Which numbers?
On our lot there to the, I think it's to the west, there is 19, 18, 17, and next to it, abutting, there is lot 29, 26, 27, and 29, 28, 27, and 26.
Okay. And then there's the proposed park is at the bottom there.
Proposed park is on the bottom of that plan, as you see on the right-hand
Okay.
side.
So you're suggesting
And
make that park subdivision and instead replace it with a
Yes.
natural trail going.
actually, incidentally, that park there is really close to another huge park, which we have, the water park there at Howard and that. So
Right.
really, I don't really see the need for this park, whereas as I say, there's an existing trail and the use of that corridor that exists today.
It's an interesting idea, thank you.
Any further questions for the delegation? Seeing none? Councillor Beswick.
In your opinion, will the total access to the trail that you reference be lost
Yes,
with the current?
yes,
Thank you.
it will be lost.
No further questions, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll need to get you to move that down a bit.
Doris Edwards, 855 Howard. I'm the Strata Complex next door. I spoke before you at the last variance, and I asked about the park as well. At that time, it was agreed to put the park at the top, exactly where that gentleman just asked. And when we got this paperwork, we see it's moved. I talked today to Dave at Community Planning. He said that the reason for moving the park was so that more people could use it, like the whole neighborhood, rather than just that subdivision. But what the gentleman just said is true. That has been traditionally the only way we can get to the Parkway Trail and all the other systems up in there. And it is all rock and moss, and it's a big slope with a ephemeral creek that runs through it. So it's not really an ideal building lot anyways. And I just wanted to point that out. And the other thing is, last time I was here, Mrs. Brennan, you made a amendment so that we could get a fence put down that property line. It was approved, and it's not included in this. So I'd like to make sure that we don't lose that. That's it.
Thank you. I wanted to ask you a question. I wonder if you can bring up page 95, please. So, right now, from Linwood Lane, there is an access through Linwood Lane to get to 8th Street.
Right. But when this property next to us gets developed, we won't be able to get to Linwood Lane without going all the way down to 8th, or Howard up at 8th. If the road goes through that new development and that park is at the top of our parking lot, we can walk right through it. And that was sort of the idea. The developer kind of agreed the last time around.
I thought originally, if you look at 881, it looks as though originally that was dedicated as park. Am I not?
Pardon me?
Was that not dedicated as park the last time?
The top corner lot, the one that's, is it 26 on, I don't have the thing with me. It's the one that's shaped like a pie right at where it joins our property next door.
It was approximately the location of lot 25 on the plan, Your Worship.
25, is it?
Okay. I got you. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Any other questions for the delegation? Seeing none, thank you very much, ma'am. Is there anyone else wishing to speak? You'll have to move it back up again, sir.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm Jeff Tomlinson. I'm a partner and project manager with J. Anderson and Associates, and we have the application before you today. A couple of things. We talked about the lot density averaging, so we aren't increasing the density on this site with respect to the zone. Also, the lot depths on 26, 27, 28, we had measured, and in conjunction with staff, we have that depth measured the way we had on the parallel. If it's an error, I can assure you it wasn't an error for any other reason than measurement error. The lot depths, the reason that the lot depths are the way they are, I think you can see.
Can we go back to that other slide, please? Page 96. Thank you.
Yeah, 26, 27, 28, because they are parallel, as the speaker mentioned quite rightly, it's what we did is we measured parallel to those lot lines. So if there was an error in the way that it was measured, it wasn't meant for any other reason than we were just following parallel lines of the lots. The reason we have the depth variance here, and I think some of you may have seen this application before, is because we were trying to create a through road, which would take through from Howard to 8th Street. And because of the width of the parent parcel, it's impossible to create three banks of lots like that. So we would end up having cul-de-sacs to access that land. As far as the park goes, we did see the park in the previous location on lot 25 on the previous application, DVP. We worked with staff to locate the park in the best location for the community, and what was determined was there's no public access to lot 25 via park, via walkway from the adjacent properties. So the park was located down in the corner that it is shown so that it's accessible by everyone. I think that about covers it.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan.
So the suggestion was made tonight about removing the park altogether and making the trail over the sort of rocky part that's often used as a trail now. What does that sound like to you?
I'm not sure how it would work with respect to the layout that we have, whether it would run along a property boundary or whether we would run along the back of lots, which would mean we would have to reduce the depth even further. I'm not exactly sure where that walkway would go.
Would you be willing to meet with the
Yes.
gentleman and listen to his ideas?
Yes, definitely.
That would be good.
Thank you. Councillor Beswick.
Thank you. Just following up on the park allocation and its location, what constitutes a park? Like what's going to happen if it proceeds as how you've proposed it? What's happening on that lot beside 18? What makes it a park?
So the intent is just to dedicate it as park with no other function to it. There's no, we haven't proposed putting in a tot lot or anything like that. It would be to leave it natural in the state that it's in now.
So thank you. So it is in fact not a deterrent or a benefit, if you will, because it's going to have, structures, play structures or kids things or whatever, swings and slides and pickleball. Like it's just going to be left in its current state.
Correct.
So, Mike, then what difference does it make whether or not all of the community can access that park or not when it's not a destination location for the moms to take their kids to swing and do whatever? It's just with the Colliery Dam and all the other parks that are available. I'm just trying to establish the basis of its benefit to the overall neighborhood in general, and not just a new development.
Well, I guess there's different uses for parks, as you said. In the case where we have parks where they're left natural, I don't know what all of what City Parks looks for when we create those parks. But when we look at the way that the lot layouts are done, we try to put a park where it makes best sense for the community that we're creating, as well as the community that's there. And so if it's placed, for instance, I know you didn't specify just for this subdivision, but if we did it up in the far corner in lot 26, it wouldn't be in proximity to a public road at Howard, and it would be tucked in the back of the subdivision. So in this case, what we've done is we've kept it in the most focal location. I don't know what the city's plans are in the future, whether they would put a top lot or something in there, but it would be visible to a major road.
Just to follow up, thank you. So I'll have two questions about that. But so the city will not assume this property. This is not a dedicated park. You're not giving the city this property, are you?
This is dedicated park.
This is dedicated park. So with all due respect to our staff, we've been moving away from taking property for parks and things because of the inherent costs and the overall benefit. So it's a community contribution that we've been removing ourselves from in many cases, unless there's a significant benefit to having a tot lot. So I don't know that it's in our budget for sure to create anything on this site. That's just my comment, and I'll look forward to your response, Mr. Lindsay. And then I hear delegations suggest that they would prefer that the park be somewhere else so that they can retain the accessibility that's already there on the rock bluff that exists for walkers and accessibilities that seem to be more desirous to people that are living in your neighborhood that you're creating, which will be lost. So I'm trying to balance the offering.
I see that Mr. Lindsay wished to respond on the last one, so if we can perhaps let Mr. Lindsay come into the conversation.
Thank you, Your Worship. To be fair to the applicant, and it's ultimately staff that provide direction as to where we would like the park to go. So I appreciate him trying to answer the questions, but ultimately it's dedicated park. Staff balance whether or not we should take park or cash in lieu. It's always preferable to take land where you're getting a sufficient size of parcel that we feel that we can actually do something with. If the parcel's too small, and the subdivisions we're seeing today are often of the size that the park 5% park dedication doesn't result in a feasible lot, we will take the cash in lieu, which I think was what Councillor Beswick has been speaking to, and that's certainly been the trend. In this case, we think the property is of sufficient size. Staff, including our parks planners, believe that this is the appropriate location for the park. No, the park will not be developed by the developer, which is always the case. We get the park dedication, but either through a capital investment by the city, or quite often what happens is through our volunteer and park programs, we get improvements to these parks. So we've seen new subdivisions throughout the community where the land gets dedicated. Ultimately, the residents, as they move in, they engage the city, and we work through our volunteer and parks program to actually see improvements in those parks in terms of play structures, benches, etc.
Thank you. Does that satisfy your questions?
I'm fine, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Kemp.
Yeah, through to the delegation. The park, this is a 20,000 square meter piece of property. 5% is the 1,010 square meters. So the park in itself is that 1,000 square meters, but lot 25 is also 1,000 square meters up in the corner. And I think that's where the public like the park. From my perspective, putting the park on Howard is more visible, which is a good thing. But it also means people are parking on Howard to visit that park or walking through there onto a busy street. Obviously, I liked it. I voted for it last time, but I like the park up in the top corner because I know that property reasonably well. There's 61 units next door in the same size property. This is 29. But if it's R1, then it can have suites in them if they're the right size. So we're looking at quite a few residents in that area. Yeah, I like a park more in the middle of a subdivision. From my point of view of planning that subdivision, I like it in the middle so people can access it from all over. And up in the top corner of this one, if the proponent is willing to discuss with the neighborhood, there's an ability for that top corner which accesses the Strata 380 from that side, and possibly, I don't know, it's only private property across the back, so no one can access from Linwood Avenue there, or they can't access there anyhow. So I'm wondering if it wouldn't be feasible to discuss the movement of the park at this stage of the game. It's feasible, right?
Yes, definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you. I see no further questions, sir. Thank you.
Thank
Councilor Brennan.
This would be for Mr. Lindsay. The pathway, the trailway that was spoken about tonight is, did staff consider that? Have you looked at that? It seems to me that, I guess at this point we have this dichotomy. Do we have a park or do we have a trail? And I'm just wondering if we can, any way to accommodate the two of them, or if one could be seen as fair exchange for the other. I just like the idea of exploring the trail a little bit.
Your Worship, absolutely. Every time that staff come into a case like this with a subdivision, we look at connections, including pedestrian connections. Where there is a public dedicated road or trail on adjacent properties, we will make every effort to make those connections. In this case, however, what you have is a private strata to the north of the subject property, which those residents currently, and I'm sorry, the word is trespass, across this private property to get access to 8th. If there was a reciprocal public access through that strata that provided access to the greater neighborhood, then it's a trail that we would look at securing and providing that interconnection through the community. Because that does not exist, and because if we built the trail today, it would essentially be a city trail that would be providing private access to one single property. For those reasons, we did not pursue with securing the trail.
Thank you. I have a question for Mr. Lindsay, and that is that's with respect to, this is a different application than what was in front of us before, by virtue of the fact that the lot layout's changed ever so slightly. So if we were to approve it tonight with all the good conversation with respect to the park location at 25 or at this current one, will we be if we approve this tonight, because we were here tonight to discuss only lot depth variance. So I'm concerned that if we're straying off the topic here, which was the lot depth variance. So if we approve this tonight, will that not allow, or will it allow a potential change to the lot layout?
So, Your Worship, I would say that an approval this evening of the development variance permit would approve the subdivision as is laid out in front of you. The subject of park dedication, whether it's dedication or cash in lieu, and the location of that dedication is not something that comes back before council as part of a subdivision application. It's ultimately something that's delegated to the approving officer through the subdivision process.
So I wonder if I could then just supplemental to that. If we're approving this lot layout today, would that prevent the swapping of those two, of the dedication of those two pieces, if that would end up being the discussion point? Because I hear what you're saying now. If you don't get a right of way or an easement onto the next private strata next door to that property, you can't put an access through 25 anyway.
Sorry, that is correct, Your Worship, but that's not the only reason that staff believe that the park at its proposed location is better. We are concerned about creating parks that have limited road frontage, that are primarily surrounded by private properties, because we have a history of those parks becoming areas where we have challenges in terms of observation of that sort of passive observation in our parks and security. It's for those reasons that we look to put the parks in the more prominent locations and try to reduce those concerns. And ultimately, staff, of course, when we're looking at the location of parks, is not just the subject subdivision, but we're looking at the context of the whole neighborhood. And when we look at the broader context, staff believe this is the preferred location.
Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just have a question about where does that, you mentioned that there's a creek that goes through the property. Where does the creek go through the subdivision? That was mentioned.
I'm not aware of a creek. I heard one of the delegations speak of a ephemeral or occasional water course through there, but I'm not aware of any protected water courses on the property.
And just another question on the blasting. Would that have an effect on how many possible residences attached? Like he stated, when you blast that rock, is it going to affect the structures surrounding that area?
If there is any blasting or rock chipping that's required, the developer would need to comply with WCB regulations and would be required to carry the appropriate insurance. So it's not uncommon. Certainly many of the parcels that we deal with today are the smaller, more difficult sites, often rocky, and it's not uncommon that blasting or rock chipping becomes part of that development of the property.
Thank you.
Yep. Councillor Brennan.
I'm just not. I'm not sure that I prefer a lot to a park that's trailway and rock outcroppings, things that are more interesting to kids than just a flat old piece of land. But if it goes this way it's proposed, do we have regulations about putting up fences around the park? Because it's on quite a busy road, so one of the things that would be important to me was to know that the kids would be safe with inside some boundary and that they couldn't just run out on the road after a ball. So what are our rules there?
Your Worship, through Councillor Brennan, we don't at the time of dedication require the developer to fence it, but certainly when the parks become developed, we'll work with neighborhood associations if the idea that it's going to be a tot lot and there's concerns about the proximity to the roadway. It's not uncommon to see fences or other barriers installed at that time to sort of mitigate that risk.
Do we bear the cost?
I'm sorry?
Do we bear the cost of that, or do we ask the neighborhood to fundraise half and half?
Well, the benefit of the Volunteer and Parks program is that we provide funding, but also that the community provides often in-kind funding through to support that.
Thank you. Through to staff. I noticed that 8th Street isn't built. Are we going to build 8th Street for this project, or is this kind of proposed road kind of dead end?
Sorry, Your Worship. The applicants will be responsible as part of their subdivision to build the frontage works and services, which would be just over half of the width of 8th Street, just so it was passable by 2 vehicles, but all of the upgrades on 8th, curb gutter, sidewalk, street lighting would all be the responsibility of the subdivision of the developer.
So they're going to build half the road?
What's required under our bylaw is that the developer must build up to the center line of the road. Obviously, we can't have just a road that only allows vehicles in one direction. So what is required is an interim modification where there's enough width to allow for passage of 2 vehicles. And then when the land's on the other side developed, the other half, or the remaining portion of the road, would then be constructed at that time.
Great, thank you.
If I could remind council that we're talking about lot depth variance here tonight. So if we can stay with lot depth variance, it'd be appreciated. Thank you. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to ask if a motion at this point is in order to get this on the table.
I would say so.
So I would like to move the staff recommendation regarding the variances.
Oh, pardon me. Before you do that, I have not done third and final call. So, is there anyone else wishing to speak with respect to DVP 321 at 897 Howard? Ma'am?
I'm Bev Beasy, and I live at 885 Linwood Lane. My concern, other than the variance that's being required, is the rock outcrop behind our house. And looking at the map here, if there was in lieu of the park, if there was a corridor, instead of swapping for lot 25, if there was a corridor that went through to 8th Street, it would give everyone in that complex and everyone on Linwood Lane and everybody that comes through to 8th Street access to the trails. It would also eliminate the problem that might be involved with blasting that rock. Our house is very close to that boundary there. We also have several, as Tibor mentioned, several trees that are practically on the property line that are within ours. And that is a concern to me with the root damage and the possible wind throw from those. So that's what I would like to see, and I would recommend that this not be passed as it is. I'm not against the development, but I am against the variance request as it stands.
Thank you very much. I don't see any questions for you, ma'am. For this, Councillor Fuller?
Yeah, this is more to staff, and it's to lot size, et cetera, et cetera. We are talking lot size, and when you look at the potential park, it is the same lot size as number 25. So to me, the conceivability of switching 25 in the park, while it may not make a lot of sense, I look at a satellite view of that map, and I see that Howard Avenue, where it's located, is within a few blocks of, as I said, Harewood Centennial Park. But not only that, it's a few blocks away from Colliery Dam Park, which is an even bigger park than Harewood Centennial Park. It's also within walking distance of the plains, as well as the South Greater Nanaimo Water District lands. And if there was a move, and I would hope that the developer might consider that, to switch out park for number 25, it does allow a lot more access to 8th Street, which allows more access to the parks to the south as well as Colliery, and still allows access of everybody to Harewood Centennial Park. And it would preserve some of the rock outcrop. The rest of it doesn't need to be developed. It would have a trail through it. So, yeah. I would like to think that at some point that could be a consideration.
Thank you. I wonder if council can keep the questions to staff as we move through the delegations, and then bring forward debate when we get into when there's a motion on the floor to debate. Thank you. Okay, so is there anyone else wishing to speak with respect to DVP 321 at 897 Howard Avenue? For the third and final time, anyone wishing to speak to DVP 321 at 897 Howard Avenue? Seeing none, is there someone prepared to move a motion? Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Chair. To get it on the table for further discussion, quite likely, I will move the staff recommendation regarding the variance permits for 897 Howard Avenue. That's DVP 321.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Armstrong.
And may I speak, please?
Certainly.
Thank you, Chair. So with regard to the staff recommendations, which have to do with the lot depth requirements and the variations, I'm satisfied with lot averaging, that those are appropriate. So I don't have a problem with that. Most of our discussion has been obviously around other issues that are related, but not directly on the lot variance. As far as, if I may, in terms of the park discussion, I think it is important that staff's recommendation be taken into account with value, because our philosophy is to have neighborhood parks in these subdivisions that can be improved by volunteer in the park programs whenever it's necessary and whenever the neighborhood feels that they wish to have a tot lot within easy walking distance of their neighborhood. This is a fairly dense project. There are going to be a lot of presumably young families, and I see the value of having a park in that open, relatively flat location. That said, I also certainly hear the concerns about the rock outcropping and its value as natural beauty and the potential of danger from blasting, and I'm wondering if the developer can take that into account in future discussions and examinations regarding this project. But in terms of the staff recommendation regarding the variances, I am prepared to support those this evening.
Thank you. Councillor Yocum.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through yourself to Mr. Lindsay. Dale, we've done so many lots and whatnot over the last numerous years. Can you give me an example as to any similar project where we've moved the variance a bit for depth and it's worked out okay? Just, I don't mean to put you on the spot. Just so for my comfort level, on ensure this depth, 2 meters per lot seems quite a bit when I think of 2 meters, but I'm sure we've done it.
Certainly, Your Worship. Numerous applications, I think I mentioned earlier this evening, a lot of the sites that we're now seeing in the community are certainly those tougher to develop properties. They've been vacant for a number of years for a reason. They all have challenges. So it's not uncommon that we're seeing variances to either lot depth or lot width. What we look at overall is at the end of the day, are we creating a buildable property? Does it meet the intent of the bylaw? And in this case, although the lot depths are being reduced, the lot widths are actually higher than the bylaw requires. So at the end of the day, we think all of these lots meet the minimum lot area requirement, but more importantly, result in reasonable building envelopes on those lots. So it's for that reason that staff support it. But to your main question, yes, there's common for applications to come forward to council on this matter.
Thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Hong.
Thank you. I'm going to tend to support this development. I wish they had more variety in their layout. Some duplex lots, some single-family lots. A bit of variety is always nice. This looks like 30-unit stale subdivision with probably cookie-cutter houses that are going to look the same. So having a variety of lot sizes would add a little bit of character to it. Some affordable units, some duplexes that people can't afford that could afford it. So that would have been nice to see. And I, see the challenges in this area. And I think that on around 8th, 9th, and 10th are the last affordable places that people can buy housing. Definitely not in the north end. So I'm hoping these other projects that we're approving are going to come online and provide some much needed housing. So when that, I will support this, but I wish they had more variety of housing. I think it's always good to have variety. Thank you.
So our last speaker is Councillor Bestwick, and then we'll go to call the question.
Thank you. I would have a question of staff. On the July 12th, 2017, J.E. Anderson, in the opening paragraph, it indicates PLA and DVP on a 29-lot fee simple subdivision. And in our motion here, it's to facilitate a 30-lot subdivision. So I'm sure it's just a clerical or something, but is the park considered a lot?
Yes.
Okay. And we always speak as a council about the importance of when we're building new in a community that we take into consideration the impact on the character of the existing neighbors, adjacent properties, and residents, and so on and so forth. So the next question would be for me was, is there a requirement for the developer for this reapplication to meet with the community on its new proposed development, which has, albeit minor, but changed?
Your Worship, our notification bylaw does not require the applicants to have a public meeting or to meet with the neighbors. Staff will often encourage that to happen. What we do is actually notice under the legislation. So we do notice to the adjacent property owners and notice within the newspaper to give opportunity for people to come this evening and provide their comments.
So thank you. So my next comment would be then by approving the variance on lot depths and hearing from some of the neighboring properties that, and who knows more about their neighborhood than the people that live in the neighborhood, or adjacent to, or on the property line of, or, well, the people that already live there 24/7. So when I hear those people respectfully say that they would prefer, they're not opposed to the development, so that's positive in terms of the development, but they would like some minor tweaking if possible, but with no possibility to have that conversation, because should we approve this tonight, we approve what's in front of us, with no obligation by the developer to take into consideration relocation of the park to another lot or maintain the existing trail access, whether they can get permission or not permission from the private property that it accesses. And because you might get that approval, you don't know until you ask. So, in which I heard the neighbors say, we'd like to keep that access for pedestrian traffic. We'd like to keep that. And I completely understand that. We'd like to keep when I heard the corner lot is going to be maintained as natural without any advanced development on it, then I heard they prefer to keep the natural rock bluff with the pedestrian access to keep it natural and for all the other benefits that it might provide with potentially no damage to the rock and so on. So, and the houses that neighbor it. So because there's no requirement of the developer to listen, I mean, they can listen, but they don't have to do anything. So yes, we accommodated, yeah, we listened to them, but we still feel that the park's in the best place and the lot layout subdivision is the best, and so that's what we're gonna do. I would like, and without a friendly, but so I want the application to proceed, but I want it to proceed with the blessings of the people that are living there in the best interest of the existing neighborhood. And I don't know that that's happening. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Show Councillor Yocum, Bestwick, and Fuller opposed. Motion passes. Next item, rezoning application number RA 381 at 133, 137, and 151 Royal Pacific Way, and 5308 and 5312 Dewar Road. To be introduced by Mr. Lindsay. You're on.
Thank you, Worship. This is very much, as outlined in the report, a housekeeping amendment. We're rezoning portions of the property to realign with new proposed boundaries as part of the associated subdivision. There's no net change to density in this case. It's simply bringing those zoning boundaries in line with the proposed subdivision boundaries.
Thank you. Is someone prepared to move the recommendation? Moved by Councillor Thorpe and seconded by Councillor Kipp. Discussion. Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed?
Excuse me, Mayor McKay, could we have it read out because it is a bylaw?
Okay. Councillor Yocum.
17 number 4500.113 RA 381 to rezone portions of the subject properties at 133, 137, and 151 Royal Pacific Way and 5308 and 5312 Dewar Road from single dwelling residential small lot, R2 to steep slope residential R10 and steep slope residential R10 to single dwelling residential small lot R2 past first reading.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Hong. Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
That zoning amendment bylaw 2017 number 4500.113 pass second reading.
Thank you very much, Councillor Yocum.
You're welcome.
Seconder, please. Seconded by Councillor Armstrong. And all those in favor. She had her hand up. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. I think you got a couple of tongue twisters coming up there, Councillor Yocum.
I do?
Yeah. Bylaws.
All right.
All right. Next one, remedial action at 1583 Bartlett Street. Would be introduced by Mr. Dale Lindsay.
Thank you, Your Worship. As you mentioned, staff are seeking council direction with respect to a remedial action order at 1583 Bartlett. It's for construction without a permit and necessary inspections.
Thank you. Is someone prepared to move the recommendation? Do we receive the correspondence? On a motion to receive the correspondence?
Should we do that before we discuss this one?
Oh, you can do that. Receive the correspondence.
Yeah. Receive.
Okay, receive the correspondence by Councillor Hong. Is there a seconder? Councillor Beswick, thank you. Discussion, Councillor Hong.
Thank you. I think we got a request here for another date until this property owner can get an agent to work with them, so I'd like to defer this for 1 month. Is that what we're talking about, correspondence with regards to Bartlett?
It's on page 2 of your green sheets.
Yeah.
I'll second the motion.
Okay. It's already been seconded.
My motion.
Oh, I'm sorry. Received. Okay, so the motion arising from that correspondence is?
To defer for 1 month.
Okay, thank you. And seconded by Councillor Brennan. Thank you. On the deferral. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next one. Bylaw contravention notice. Construction started without a building permit at 101-1930 Island Diesel Way. To be introduced by Mr. Dale Lindsay, Director of Community Development. Mr. Lindsay.
Thank you, Worship. As you mentioned, we're seeking council's direction with respect to a notice on title. It's for work completed without necessary permits or inspections.
Thank you. It's requested that council hear anyone wishing to speak with respect to bylaw contravention notice at 101-1930 Diesel Way. Please come down. Good evening, gentlemen. Name and address for the record, please.
My name is Josh Fairman. I'm co-owner of 1930 Highlands Away.
I'm Robin White. I'm owner of White Line Developments, and Josh is also an equipment contractor. We've sort of inherited the building. We purchased the building the first week of April, and it's obviously come to our attention that there was construction happening by the previous owner, and we've been working with the city. We've met with planning. We've met with the building inspections. We've had inspectors in to look at it. We've had the as-built plans drawn up with an architect and with Herald Engineering with the reviews. So we have our ducks in a row. We've had the sprinkler systems as-built put in as well. They're all correctly installed. Like I say, we're applying for a permit and putting our ducks in a row to get everything. So there's been lots of communication with all the departments, and it's just a matter of a little bit more time. We found out Friday that our property was being brought up at council, so we had today to sort of get things, paperwork in order.
Sorry, might I add that, at the time, the whole reason why this was brought up was the fact that we applied for a business license so that I can operate a Nanaimo-based business. And at that time, it was determined that there was improvements done. Now, it states in the background saying construction of an additional second story, and I'll put it in perspective. It was actually the enclosing of a mezzanine that's approximately 200 to 300 square feet. The rest of the work, I believe, and again, we're going through it, had been done through, call it permits, or the requirement for permits, and it was only that this last final, mezzanine enclosure, which is what is actually in contravention. Now, when we received this on September 7th, it was noted that this was a bylaw contravention. Now, we have been in constant communication with bylaw. My understanding is that this is actually is being put forward by building services. We have been sifting through between 500 and 700 pages of documentation regarding, zoning and bylaws and permits. But the truth of the matter is that since we took possession of the property on April 1st, but since March 22nd, we have been making measures to bring this up to meet the current zoning and bylaw requirements. However, this being, today, simply what we're asking for is an extension. All city staff that we've dealt with, whether it was rezoning, planning, construction, or bylaw, would all generally agree that we've been in constant communication through this process. And my concern here is that, and understandably, I know that this is just giving the city staff the ability to put this on title with the permission of council. However, I'm asking council to just refrain from making a motion on it or to defer it until all the information can be put out and as what we've been advised and directed to do so by city staff.
Thanks very much.
Question.
We have questions for you. Councillor Hong.
Thank you. How much time are you requesting?
Well, currently, as we all know, I'm in the construction industry. I think there's a lot of engineers in this room, and even yourselves are very, very busy. We, since March 22nd, have taken almost 6 months just to get seismic, have engineers, review as-builts. So it's really hard for us to specify a definitive timeline because we can't get the sub-consultants to necessarily provide anything. But I think critically we are close, and we've scheduled a meeting with planning and bylaw and construction so that we can move forward. Now, that has been kind of stymied over the course of the summer with vacations, but I feel like we're making very good ground. However, I don't know if I can honestly be able to provide you with a definitive timeline. I think that would probably be up to bylaw and maybe construction that could be requested of them, as long as they think that communication is open and we're working to, collectively to find a solution that if it takes a month, if it takes 2, 3, 4, it will be basically on the premise that we're working on.
Building permit is, we only realizing now that a building permit will be required to complete the as-builts. We can have that in within the next 30 days. We've got all our paperwork, we've got all our engineering. Actually, if this will work, then if we do need to make work, that could be the...
Yeah, you just need to apply for a permit, I think is what it's requesting, right? Okay.
And I deal with the city all the time with building permits, so it's getting all the proper paperwork in at the right time. So that's what we got done.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Beswick.
Thank you. Thank you. You spoke to a 200 square foot mezzanine enclosure. Is that the work that you...
We didn't do, we purchased it
as is.
Without a building. That's the part that does not have a building permit. The rest of the alterations had building permits in place.
So that's the portion that you're working to remedy?
And it wasn't determined that it was even in contravention of a bylaw when we purchased it. We're a construction company. A construction company was currently inhabiting that space. They had performed all the work prior. It wasn't until basically inspection on March 22nd that bylaw came in and said that, and actually it wasn't until, May 30th that we were actually notified that we wouldn't get our business license because we were in contravention of the bylaw. So, we had, from our perspective, we bought the property, replacing one construction company with another construction company, and then found that this mezzanine is really the only piece of construction that's in question. construction, but is resulting in this bylaw
Thank you.
contravention.
So we don't want that to happen to the next company that walks into not necessarily our place, but another place, right? So, so you're willing to bring this into compliance. You just need more time.
This isn't a matter, this isn't a matter of wanting to go against, the bylaw. We are trying to do this, we're applying for our permits and wanting to do so, but we also need the collective collaboration from city staff, and this takes time as we all see, and we want to make the right decision.
Yep. Thank you.
The property has history, but it's not. We're only realizing the history now.
Thank you. Councillor Yocum.
Oh, thank you. Just quickly, thank you, gentlemen. I just first of all appreciate coming forward to rectify a problem you inherited, and secondly, to gentlemen on the right, thank you for bringing your NIMO base for your business. And seems like you want to rectify this. So I don't know what time frame you're looking for. Jerry sort of touched on a little bit of time frame. I heard a month or two from you, sir.
Well, 60 days, we can have all our paperwork and permits and things in place.
Yeah. So
I think you should. Sorry.
No worries.
Sorry, the original was that we could probably have the paperwork ready for submission within 30 days. And then as far as permits, it would be up to the city staff and the building department to issue permit, which is whatever the lead time on that is.
Okay. Well, whatever motion, or if there is a following motion, I'll have no issue supporting the request when we get to that point. If we get to that point, thanks.
You, Councillor Kipp.
Thank you. You've had about 5 months so far, right? From April?
Well, May 30th was where it's an actual, I got an email from Jason Wells saying that, no, you do need a permit. So that's when we started getting the process together. May 30th was when we
Well, it says in my report that April 28th was the date to submit an application. So April 28th, May, June, July, August, and so we're 4.5 months to get drawings of as-builts. And because of summer, aren't we great as Canadians? We just, summer delays everything. I've been gone for a month, right? So, to me, it's just taking a lot of time. I understand it. I know it takes a long time to get a plan through now. Trust me, it can take an awful lot of time. So you're saying within 30 days you can have a permit application in place? So you'd like an extension for 30 days to get the permit done? That's what I'm hearing. And then permit would be probably 4 to 5 weeks after that. That's what it takes right now to review a permit. So, okay, so you're looking for a 1-month extension. Thank you.
No further questions for you, gentlemen. Thank you. I need to ask, is there anyone else that wishes to speak with respect to bylaw contravention notice at 101 1930 Islandiza Way for the second time? And for the third and final time, anyone wishing to speak to contravention notice at 101 1930 Islandiza Way? Seeing none, is there someone prepared to move a motion?
Over 30 days.
Moved and seconded. Okay. You're moving a 30-day extension? Okay, and you're seconding it, Councillor Kipp? Thank you. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you. I was in fact going to provide a motion that would issue 60 to 90 days in order, in recognition of how busy the construction industry is in our city right now to get small, medium, and large jobs accomplished. And whenever people come and stand before us and say, this is what our intention is to do, and then we hold them to that. And for me, 30 days, okay, sure, get a building permit issued in 30 days, okay. I'd rather take some of the pressure off and say, okay, you have 60 to 90 days to get your building permit and, frankly, complete the project. Because a building permit is a piece. It's not, it's not everything. So I'll support the motion, but I'd prefer to see it being longer. Thank you.
Councillor Hong.
I tend to agree with Councillor Bestwick, but I think 30 days from this owner and this business person, because I think we need to get staff moving on this one so we can get a building, so he can get a business license. At this point, he can't get a business license. So why wait 60 days? Let's just do it in 30 days so he can get a business license and get on with his business. I think that's more pressing. So I'm either or, but I think 30 works for me, because why wait 60 days to get a business license? Thank you.
Thank you. I wonder if I could ask staff a couple of questions on this one here. In a previous life, I found myself having to deal with this. This is the first duty I had to deal with when I was appointed to look after a small business here in Nanaimo. And what I found interesting was that there was a whole list of offenses with respect to exactly the same thing. It was a mezzanine structure in an existing building. I'm not sure. And it was a very odd process. At the end of the day, there was an order placed on it, and just for Councillor Hong's purposes, the business had been in business at that location for 3, perhaps 4 years. And while every year they paid their business license fees, they were never issued a business license. So it was a very odd process, to say the least. In any case, my concern was that the next step after this will be a notice to order the removal of the, quote, offending structure. So that's what I'm concerned about, and I would really prefer if the movers of the motion would pull the date out to 90 days. Because it's going to take a while to get this through. And there was building inspections involved, and what was really bizarre about the one I was involved with was the fact that there were a number of items that were demanded to be changed, life and safety issues, and then when the building inspector showed up on the scene, the list of work that was required done completely changed. So it was, as I say, a very bizarre process. So I'll vote in favor of the 30 days, but I'd sure like to see a friendly amendment to take that to 90.
I'll make the friendly amendment.
Okay. Is there a seconder? And well, hang on a second. You're making the friendly amendment. Is that okay with the mover and the seconder?
Say if we change with the proponent's right to get a business license. So is that correct? Maybe Mr. Lindsay could let us know that.
Your Worship, that is correct. It doesn't mean that staff would take action against the business. Ultimately, again, we want to work with anybody who's prepared to bring the buildings into compliance. I'm hearing this evening that we have owners that are trying to rectify past errors in the building, and we're happy to work with them. And if it's 30 days or 90 days, I think we can achieve that.
Okay, well then, yeah, I can. I'm happy to say 90 days if.
You were the mover?
I was.
Okay, seconder was Councillor Kemp. Are you okay with that? Yeah. Okay. So the motion on the floor as amended is 90 days. All right, I'm going to call the question. Unless you want to speak further, Councillor Bestwick. You're on the list.
Well, I just wanted to say that the applicant, just because it says 90 days or 65 or 45 or 40, they don't want to take that long. I'm sure that they'd like to make it as swift as possible, but I don't want them to find themselves the only thing that they can do in the next 29 days is this, if you will, because they're in business. And so let's get going. They're going to get going. Let's just give them enough time to get everything that they need. So.
Thank you. Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next one. Bylaw contravention notice at 4978 Fillinger Crescent. To be introduced by Mr. Dale Lindsay. Mr. Lindsay.
Thank you, Worship. This is also a notice on title, as you mentioned, for the subject property. Again, it's work completed without the necessary inspections, and it's not in compliance with the issued permit.
Thank you very much. So, it's requested that council hear anyone wishing to speak with respect to bylaw contravention notice at 4978 Fillinger Crescent. For the second time, anyone wishing to speak to 4978 Fillinger Crescent? And for the third and final time? Seeing none, is someone prepared to move the recommendation?
So move the recommendation that the corporate officer to file a bylaw contravention notice at the Land Title and Survey Authority of British Columbia under Section 57 of the Community Charter for the property located at 4978 Fillinger Crescent.
Thank you very much. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Armstrong. Moved by Councillor Besser. Discussion. Seeing none, call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next one, bylaw contravention notice. Construction not completed as per building permit at 703 Victoria Road. To be introduced by Mr. Lindsay.
Thank you, Your Worship. Again, a notice on title for the subject property. In this case, is work completed without the necessary inspections.
Thank you. It's requested that council hear anyone wishing to speak with respect to bylaw contravention notice at 703 Victoria Road. For the second time, anyone wishing to speak to bylaw contravention notice at 703 Victoria Road? And for the third time, 703 Victoria Road. Seeing none, is there someone prepared to move the recommendation?
And so move that council direct the corporate officer to file a bylaw contravention notice at the Land Title and Survey Authority of British Columbia under Section 57 of the Community Charter for the property located at 703 Victoria Road.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Thorpe. Moved by Councillor Besser. Did you wish to speak to it?
Oh, no.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no speakers, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. The next one is 432 Howard Avenue, to be introduced by Mr. Brad McRae, Chief Operations Officer.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. This is an information report for council detailing the investigation of 432 Howard Avenue.
Thank you. There is a delegation, Mr. Leon Cake. Can the clerk please advise the time permitted?
10 minutes.
10 minutes, thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. My name is Leon Cake, 5936 Schooner Way, and I have no relationship or know of this person at 432 Howard Avenue other than just see him come before council a few times. I just have a few questions, and I appreciate the report finally getting before council on this property, because I have my concern has come from seeing the price tag that this man's going to have on his property when this is, I guess eventually passed and cemented in. So the questions I have when I'm looking at the report and how the assessment was done, it states here that when the city was on site, that they received a complaint for the soils that were deposited on the property that may be in violation of the city bylaw and provincial legislation. So the question I have is, was the city actually on the site and then got a phone call that someone said the soil's contaminated, and that's where the city got first notification? Can I ask that question to staff?
Mr. McRae.
So through Your Worship, staff were, it's referred to in plain sight, which was staff were in attendance to examine the property. And as they attended the site, they were made aware of the soil, coupled with there was a complaint that was brought to their attention at the same time. Due to confidentiality reasons, I won't disclose where that complaint came from.
Yep.
So it states in the summary of this, where it says, I guess it confirms it, he says the subject of the complainant did not divulge where the soil was gathered from. So the question I have to city, once someone has established a complaint and will not register themselves, then we identify this soil as being contaminated. Has this person not put himself in violation? Because under the Ministries Act, you have to report any contaminated site so that there can be a permit applied to that in the registry. So when that happened, should that not have been a huge flag for the city at that time? The radar should have gone off. We should have been at that point identifying where this soil was. How do we not know that this soil has moved 20 more times in the city of Nanaimo from the site? That's a question that I can only ask. What is the procedure once someone says, I'm not going to tell you who I am, but I think that soil is contaminated? I could have been the developer that phoned that in. and wanted to make sure that they didn't come back on me because I just moved it, and I moved it maybe 6 more times to other people that haven't found out that they've got contaminated soil. So the question I have is two-part question, that question. And when the city, when I apply for a building permit for a condo or a strata title development, is there not a footprint that is identified in my request for a permit that would actually show the amount of volume of earth that would be taken out of the site? And at that point in time, could we not identify the movement of soil? Because anything under 500 cubic yards is not required to be tested. But anything above that has to have a permit. Okay, so the permit leads back to, well, hold on, is this soil contaminated? Because this is identified in the corridor. This contaminated soil came from somewhere in the city in a corridor of contamination. But now we're dealing with this person that lives at 432 Howard Avenue with a $91,000 bill. And we did not do our job, in my opinion, from the day that it was notified through someone saying, I'm not going to tell you who I am, but that soil is contaminated. Then we tested it, then we identified it, then it went before council a few times, the motion was passed, and this guy was tanked. So the request I have to council is that we need to rethink this, because who else got this soil? Do we know that? Do we concern ourselves with that? Or is it just this one person at this? And I know he's had a lot of issues with his deficiencies on trying to get this home built or renovated. But there are some other things that should have been stopped at the very, very beginning of this. And all of this might have gone away for this person. It might have been something that the city could work with, because don't forget, somewhere along the line, we gave him a price tag of $30,000 to $40,000 to remediate this. That was after we identified the soil, after we tested it. But we still did nothing to find out the source of the movement of the soil. Because there's a process that should have happened, that when the city identified this soil, we didn't know the quantity. We didn't know if it was 500 cubic meters or 1,000 cubic meters. Did we report this to the ministry so that it could go on the registry as a possible contaminated site? There's some things here that I feel, and maybe we did it, it'd be great that it comes forward and produces that the information that I've gone and studied has been verified. But when I look at this person with a $91,000 bill, I go, holy cow. Anybody in this room not feel for this man? Because when I look at the tipping fee, the question I have on the tipping fee, when you do the math at the regional district landfill for contaminated soil or contaminated product, it's $500 a ton. When you do the math, it stated somewhere that the amount of soil was, I think, 320 cubic yards. So we've identified that all the material that went off that property was basically contaminated soil. But we started down the path on 432 Howard Avenue in regards to bed mattresses, 3 cars, junk, other stuff. So if we took all that product off his site, did we bill him for the entire removal for contaminated soil at the city landfill that he got stung with a $500 a ton tippage fee? Because you do the math. I don't know if any of you guys looked at this. I look at the math, and I feel for this man right now, because I think somewhere in the equation of the breakdown, I think we took the whole amount that went off that site, because there was identified 3 cars at one time, and I don't know where 5,000, I've got that. 3 cars removal was $5,000. But in the report, it basically says you rolled it into the 91,000. So I start looking at this, and I think, boy, this should be broken down to how much was the weight of soil, how many cars, what was the actual separation of the product that was existing to start this thing down 432 Howard Avenue's, complaints and all the things he was breaking his violations, to help this man's bill go down. But we've done nothing, in my eyes, to really identify a lot of things that we should have done the due diligence on. So all I'm going to ask this council to do, for the sake of this man, and I don't know this man, but I know Harewood, somewhere, if we're going to stick $91,000 on a guy's taxes that you're going to come after in 3 years if he doesn't pay it, you got to look in the mirror. You got to look in the mirror. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councilor Bestwick.
Thank you. I'd just like to ask the presenter a question, please.
Mr. Cake.
Sorry, I thought I was finished.
Thank you, Mr. Cake. Just in your presentation, and I just wanted to ask you the question, because I think that I understand your line of where some of this. So there was 300 cubic meters, 307 cubic meters located at 432. Is part of your point that when, the dirt could have been moved 5 times, 6 times, whatever, and with no permit required for a restricted product being contaminated under 500 cubic meters, that maybe the origin of this soil, which we don't know where the origin is, 200 meters went over here, and 100 went over there, and 300 went over here, and 200 went over here, because we don't know what the origin is and how much soil could have or would have been there post a development on that site, that would have had to have dug a hole to have a pile of soil that you'd want to move somewhere. So is that a part of what you're suggesting? Without knowing where the origin of this soil came from, there could be contaminated soil from that site all over Nanaimo that we just don't know about, that's been buried and covered up by now.
When I visited that site, when the soil was actually on the site, and I looked at the soil itself, I have seen, because that's my job, I go to construction sites, I've seen the same kind of soil on other sites with broken concrete mixed in, and in the case of the city doing the soil analysis and finding the tin and the lead and the zinc, I guess my question would be was how much of the soil was actually tested? Was it tested 10 times in 20 locations? Those kind of things. I look at the volume, okay, look at the volume, I do the math backwards, I look at the bill, that's roughly maybe 30 14-yard truckloads going out to the landfill, being tipped and charged at that much of a rate. I just don't know what the breakdown is, because obviously the city has that, but because it was identified as a contaminant, now I know it falls under the radar of the volume, but under the Ministry of Environment's everything I've been reading, it should have been put on the registry. And I'll give a comparison to that. And this one costed us $357,700, the city taxpayers. Cliff Street, soil mixing. Try to find us on the registry on that. That's what failed our ability to perform there. We had to pay that one. So the reality is, for a guy that's just a regular guy, paying $91,000, it's a lot of money. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just hope you guys have a heart.
Councilor Kipp.
Not to them. I understand 3 cars were taken off the site, and I understand it was $5,000. I'm aware that the Kidney Foundation takes cars for $250 for a tax receipt. So I'm wondering why $5,000 for 3 vehicles. That seemed a bit much for me. I've got a few cars taken away in my lifetime, but 3 cars for $5,000, does that mean for some reason they were embedded in the soil and were dirty and needed to be cleaned? Or can I have an explanation why $5,000 for 3 cars and the breakdown I've heard?
Good for now, Dan. Mr. McRae?
Yes, through the acting. All I can indicate right now is on page 125, where it says vehicle removal charges were not included in this bill and were absorbed by the overall cost of the cleanup. So that's the information I was provided when I prepared this report. So the global bill represents taking everything off.
Well, go ahead, Jim. From my perspective, on a follow-up on that, breakdown. You just accept a bill on somebody's property and don't get an itemized breakdown? And dirt is, wet topsoil is about 1.4 tons per cubic meter. So 300 and something tons is 540 tons of soil. At $500 a ton, that math doesn't add up. So from my perspective, for the city just to accept a costing on this without even the indication of how the breakdown is, you just take a $90,000 bill I think we have to look at that, and anything we take in, we should question. I think our core service review proved to us that we need to question figures. And we need to question them all the time and dynamically. So I find this to be, it is troublesome to me. Corey Corluck was the same thing to me. These things get built, and they build, and they build. And like I say, there is so much of lack of responsibility in this and some accountability to process. The speaker mentioned the $370,000 or whatever it is. I think it's way more than that. In my estimation, I've been waiting a year for that report, almost a year. So the first report I heard said 3 cars, $5,000. Now that's changed. And it's just all swept into one big bill. That's a terrible breakdown for toxic soil and toxic material, just to say, oh yeah, we just hauled it off. What did the RDN do with it? Where did it go? Cradle to grave is what this corporation is supposed to be doing. Cradle to grave. That means where that soil came from and where it ends up. And it should have the proper diking where it goes. It should have the proper berming. It should have the proper receiving points. It should have a sign off by the minister on all soils moved in and out. And that's not happening. Very disappointed, extremely disappointed with just a bill made up. Did we monitor this? Did we have like in an emergency situation, we're supposed to have someone on scene to make sure people aren't just overbilling us. When we administer this type of work on someone's property, are we monitoring it? Staff?
So, through the new chair. Yes, we, again, bylaw services, along with environmental building, when the activities were taking place, staff were involved in the actions happening. The course took over 3 days. I believe there was 32 truckloads that were itemized at how much the weight was per truck that went to the RDN. So there is that breakdown. Staff provided this to council as an overall global information for breakdown for labor, for soils, etc. We do have that itemized breakdown. In saying that, we provided this to council for information purposes only.
So we can see that other information one time if we ask for it? I'd love to see the breakdown of this, just to give me a future, because I've lived through a couple of these. The Corey Corluck one was one. This is another one, the Cliff Street soils. So I'd like to know that for my decision making on hundreds of millions of dollars, I need to observe what's being done. And like I say, I need to see the information, I guess. I'll dig it up somehow. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers on the subject? Mr. McRae?
Just in response to Councillor Kipp's question. So what I'll be doing is I'll be heading back to staff tomorrow morning, and I will pull up all the itemized pieces that are available for you to review, and it will be emailed to council first thing tomorrow.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Councillor Hong?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm just trying to do the math, and I'm not no mathematician, but I guess it depends on what the landfill was charging them for. So if you're looking at construction waste, if it's solid waste, regular garbage, $125 a ton. Municipal solid waste containing recyclables is $250. Construction demolition waste is $360 a ton. And I'm assuming that's the number they probably use is $360 a ton, because I can't see them being asbestos removal. So doing the math, $360 a ton. And if you're saying that each yard, cubic yard, not a meter, cubic yard is about a ton. 2,000 pounds, I think it is, or 1 ton at 300 yards. The math it's pretty accurate when you do the breakdown on 300 yards, not meters, it's yards actually. So I think a yard is less than a meter as well. So doing the math, $72,000 or $73,000 in tipping fees would work. Depends on what number that they were charged at the dump.
Do they go to the dump?
I don't know. That's what I'm saying is if we're looking at that.
Go to one of the guys' sites somewhere up in the Alma River?
So.
Do we know that dirt went to the dump? Huh?
Yes.
So I'll check at the RD. I'm on the solid waste committee. I can dig
Thank
that
you.
out.
Thanks. Just so I'm going to make a quick comment on this is absolutely, it's an expensive price tag, as Mr. Cake stated, and this gentleman is coming before us. I hope somewhere down the road, I don't know if we ever found out where it came from and the people that removed the soil. So I think there has to be some accountability, and maybe this guy was taken by where the site was, and there has to be some accountability all around there as well, where the soil came from. But anyways, I'll leave it at that. I don't know the formalities, ma'am. No.
Receive it. Motion to receive.
Motion to receive. Delegation.
No, report.
Report. All in favor.
Delegations too, right? When it starts the delegation, Mr. Cake was a delegation. Do we have to receive that?
It's not required, no.
Okay, perfect. So,
There is a recommendation to receive the report.
Okay, recommendation by Jerry, Councillor Hong, Councillor Thorpe. All in favor.
I'm opposed to the report.
One opposed to the report. Are we on bylaws now? All right. Bylaws zoning,
You want someone to read them?
yeah.
Okay, I'll do zoning, no accompanying reports. Zoning Amendment Bylaw 2017, number 4500.106. That zoning amendment bylaw 2017, number 4500.106, that is RA 371, to rezone 2020 Estevan Road from Community Service 1, CS1, to Mixed Use Corridor, Core 2, be adopted.
All in favor? Passed. Thank you.
Zoning Amendment Bylaw 2017, number 4500.110, the zoning amendment bylaw 2017, number 4500.110, that is RA 376, to rezone 5030 Hammond Bay Road from single dwelling residential R1 to single dwelling residential small lot R2 be adopted.
Second by Councillor Thorpe. All in favor? Passed.
Zoning Amendment Bylaw 2017, 4500, number 111, the zoning amendment bylaw 2017, number 4500.111, RA 377, to rezone 5616 Big Bear Ridge from single dwelling residential R1 to duplex residential R4 be adopted.
Second by Councillor Thorpe. Any discussion? All in favor? Okay.
And this is item D, the official community plan amendment bylaw 2017, number 6500.034, to redesignate 2020 Estevan Road on the future land use plan, map 1, from neighborhood to corridor, and to redesignate 2020 Estevan Road on the neighborhood land use, map 1, from neighborhood to mixed use corridor be adopted.
Second by Councillor Thorpe. Any discussion? All in favor? Passed.
Okay, highway closure and dedication removal, a portion of Shenton Road and Diver Road adjacent to 3789 and 3801 Shenton Road, that is bylaw 2015, number 7180, be adopted.
Second, Councillor Thorpe. Any discussion? All in favor? Passed.
Then the housing agreement bylaw 2017, number 7247, that is RA 363, to authorize a housing agreement for a 220-bed student housing development at 525 3rd Street be adopted.
Second by Councillor Thorpe. All in favor? Passed. I forgot discussion. Passed. Okay.
And I'd like to just move the bylaw sheet, status sheet for receipt for information.
Second. Second, Councillor Thorpe. Any discussion? Councillor Brennan? Oh, sorry. Councillor Hong? You guys looked at me like you had a conversation, discussion. But anyways, all in favor? Passed. Oh, opposed? Oh my God, we're on a flow. And then you started that. All in favor? Passed. Thank you. Okay. All right. 11A, correspondence. Correspondence and petition. This is, do we got to put this in the minutes?
Move receipt of the correspondence.
Moved by Councillor Kipp. I'll hand it over to the mayor. We're right there.
Thank you.
I just move receipt of the correspondence.
Okay, is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Thorpe. Thank you. Any discussion? Councillor Kipp?
No, I was not.
Okay. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next one, correspondence from Mr. Ron Walker, dated 2017, July 5th, regarding Kidney Foundation. Move receipt. Councillor Kipp, seconded by Councillor Hong. Thank you. Discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Move receive the correspondence report of order.
Moved by Councillor Kipp, seconded by Councillor Hong. Seeing no discussion, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Business arising from correspondence. Seeing none, move on to other business. Councillor Brennan.
Resolution to the Union of BC Municipalities. Do you want me to read the whereases or go straight to the substance?
I think for procedure, I think we'd best read them.
Okie doke. Whereas the term of office for local government officials in BC was increased from 3 to 4 years beginning with the 2014 local general election, and whereas in many communities the services of local government's elected officials is considered to be a part-time commitment with levels of remuneration that reflect this, and the 4-year term may deter elected officials from running for a second term, thereby reducing the number of experienced elected officials on regional district boards and municipal councils throughout the province. Therefore, be it resolved that the provincial government amend the Local Government Act to reduce to 3-year terms, to 3 years the term of office for local government elected officials, allowing a broader range of elected officials with experience to participate in local government. And I can speak to that if you wish.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I have experienced 2-year terms and 3-year terms and 4-year terms. And by far, I think that the 3-year term is the better number for various reasons. And I think 2-year terms is very short, and it's difficult for a council to come together, formulate their goals and their vision, and then execute with only 2 years. 4 years is a long time. It is. It can sometimes seem endless, and it, I think, is. I think that we have found it more difficult to execute on our visions and our strategic plans. I fear that may be because we think we have the luxury of time, when in fact we don't. I think that the 3-year term is, it brings closer contact between citizens, voters, and councils. I think it makes it easier to check in with the voters in every 3 years to say, okay, let's sit down and go through this. What have we accomplished? What have we still got to accomplish? And where have we utterly failed? I think it's easier for the community to identify that things are not going according to their vision, and then they have a tool to try to correct that. It's a quicker, easier tool. Change in direction is easier to make. If you have to wait for 4 years, that's a long time to wait to change the direction. And it's too long, I've been told by citizens, it's too long for them to wait. Senior levels of government will fall if they lose the confidence of the House. But we don't have a comparable loss of confidence mechanism at municipal council. So I think if we rein that in to 3 years, we have a more frequent opportunity to determine how things are going and stay with the course or change the course. But it does give the voters that opportunity, and it's for that reason that I'm asking us to take this forward to the UBCM.
Thank you. Councillor Kipp.
Just one question. on your last paragraph, are we requesting the province, or we request UBCM to take it to the province? Therefore, be it resolved
Right.
that we request UBCM?
Well, I ran this past the UBCM to ask them to assist me with the language. This is what they produced, but I have no objection to us asking the UBCM to take this forward if you feel that's a better way of stating it.
Just wondering if it is, from my perspective, if I can have a follow-up too. Yeah, I've witnessed some 3- and 4-year terms, and I think what people are looking for is a form of accountability. Quite honestly, I think it's a small web page that's asking right now for this 3 years. It seems very tied to the politics of local government right now. So, I mean, I can move this to UBCM, but I supported the 4-year term. It's one of the things that I actually supported of the Local Government Management Association over the last years. The report came through in 2010, 2012 to UBCM, and 2013. It was just changed for this last election. And one of the purposes of that was that they felt elections were expensive, tying it to the 4-year. But to get accountability in this versus trying to change the province back to a 3-year, I've said before it'd be nice to see a 2-year into a term having some review. I mean, for accountability, I'd rather than trying to just switch it to a 3-year where you say, oh, it's 4 is too long and 3 is perfect, well, and 2 is too short. But for me, I find that this council, for example, never even had a strategic plan for 2 years. Couldn't even get it done. So 3 years, we would have been over-installed, and then people would have wondered how to vote for us. And they're not going to probably change their mind for a 3 or 4-year term. So from my perspective, I voted for the 4-year term. What I prefer to see is some accountability that when you run for council, that the council must have a strategic plan drawn up within 6 months, and to start to deliver that, and then 2 years in, have some form of questionnaire, referendum or something to see how the strategic plan is doing and how the budget's being delivered. And then 2 years later, there'd be an election. So I can support this going to UBCM to be debated and talked about and lobbied. But yeah, if the government, if they lack confidence in us, there's a reason for that. And most of that's played out on Facebook in my mind. That's the politics right now. I haven't heard from anybody, not a soul other than the people that have been lobbied through this, 3 or 4 people, to say that they need to change the term. And I remember talking about it it was about 60% that went through at UBCM. And it was perpetrated upon UBCM by the local government. And Gregor Robertson is one of the ones who has pushed this and brought this forward. And there's even questions if you look up in the newspapers and all the articles about it, just type in 4-year municipal terms and you'll see a lot of the debate. So I support the fact that it sends through as a councillor, but I doubt if I will support it at UBCM. In fact, I won't. Thank you.
I'm wondering if everyone's mind is made up on this. There's 7 speakers now. We were supposed to have a break at 9 o'clock, a recess at 9 o'clock. Now with 7 speakers, we'll probably be 9:45 by the time we get into that. Does anybody have any urgent need to debate this significantly? Okay, well, we'll just carry on. 7 speakers. Councillor Hong.
Thank you. First of all, I just need some clarification on, I'm just trying to understand this motion where it says the 4-year term may deter elected officials from running a second term, thereby reducing the number of experienced officials. Well, if you want more experienced officials, shouldn't you increase it to 5 years or 6 or 7? Because then they're all experienced. So if I'm run for 4 years and I say that, oh, it's too long, I don't want to do it the next term, that seems to be the opposite of me experiencing. If I feel like I'm going to run again, whether it's 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, I would run again. That doesn't eliminate the experienced elected officials. They're going to run no matter what, regardless of the terms, if they feel like it. Like, how is that going to deter me because it's a 4-year from running again. And while I'm not super experienced, I do have 1 term, so it's more than the next person that doesn't have a term. So I'm confused about the wording on what the gist of this is. If it's just to get rid of crappy counselors and you don't want them for 4 years so that people can say, just turn them over. Let's just turn them over, get rid of them, because we don't have to wait for 4 years, we can wait for 3. Well, let's just call it that. Because this doesn't make any sense to me. On if you're experienced, you want the term to be longer. Why wouldn't you call it like a 6-year? Because they're experienced. If I already have 1 term under me, my next motion, if I'm going to run, should be, well, we should go 5 years. Because I'm experienced. You want me in the seat. I have experience. I've been here. So I don't quite understand the wording of this. I'm willing to bring anything to UBCM. I don't have a problem with it. Because again, this is beyond us. This isn't about us. This is about all municipalities across BC. And we're at UBCM representing that. So that doesn't make any sense. What I would like to see, honestly, is a cap. Let's limit to 3 consecutive terms or 2 consecutive terms. We want changeover. Is it changeover or is it experience? What is it? If it's experience, you want them there longer. If it's a turnover and you don't want those people, then you cap it and you get rid of them so you have new people. So I'm confused on what we're trying to do with this. Because once I get that clarification, then I'll know how I'm going to vote. Because I have some points I'd like to point out. Depends on where we're going with this. Thank you.
So, Council, I think the motion that's on the floor is, or pardon me, the proposal is pretty self-explanatory. So if we can just stay with debate on the motion as it's written, that would be appreciated. Councillor Yoakum.
Thank you. I have no problem supporting the motion to get it to UBCM, but I just want to state that my experiences since 2002 were all 4-year terms, and it does work and can work, continuity good work. I know some people out there may have some critics, may have their views of this council, and that's their right, and they're right, but those are some critics, I think, they want some of us here for 4 years as well. So I have no problem. We'll vote yes to get this UBCM, but let the collective as a province decide. And I just want to state, though, in a 4-year term, which worked really well at Sanemo, in my view, was there were 4-year terms, but they were staggered. So you also had the continuity of 4 people going. So you didn't lose the work of the day. It doesn't come to a stall, and then you wait 2 years, as someone stated, to get a strategic plan going. So that started in 2002, and there were 4 years. I don't want to hear give a history lesson, but nevertheless, or a lecture. But so 4 years can and does work, and there's other models besides this. This, to me, this is, well, I won't get in my view of this. Absolutely, I will support this and get it to the larger table. Thank you.
Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you. Democratically, I'm fine to take the motion to UBCM. I've served through 3 3-year terms, and now I'm into my first 4-year term. And when many people speak to me about whether they're running or not, and commitment and time and all of those things, the one thing that I always say to people is if you're willing to run once, you have to be willing to run twice. So if you're not willing to hang in for 6 years, because year 1, you're just figuring stuff out. Year 2, you're kind of in the middle of something. And then year 3, you're in the silly season, politicking again, and pretty much approving anything that comes down the pipe in January of an election year. So with 4 years, if you follow the theory that if you're going to run once for 3 years, and you agree with, well, if you can't just run once and then bail, you might lose in the second election, which is fine. That's your test. So you're really committing for 6 years when you're committing, to me, to run the first time. That's just my thinking. It's very difficult to achieve and accomplish what you probably think you can or could or want to or would like to in 3 years of office. So you better be ready to hang in for 2 terms. So for me, it's 6 years or 8 years. And if you're not willing to invest in the next 8 years of your life, then don't run. That said, I think more can get done in years 2 and 3 in a 4-year cycle than in 1 year 2 in a 3-year cycle. I think more roll up your sleeves work can get done in 2 and 3. So, but we'll see what happens. This was a provincial legislation and mandate, regional district, school board, province, cities. It wasn't ours. We didn't say we're going to be 4 and everybody else is going to be 3. So I'm quite fine for it to go to UBCM and see what happens. But that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Councillor Thorpe.
Thanks, Chair. I'll try to be brief. I'll certainly support moving this ahead to UBCM. I think it's the basis for some interesting debate and discussion, and there's other models out there, as other councillors have indicated, which certainly could stand some debate as well. I just know that from my experience talking to people who are considering getting involved in local politics, they recognize it is a commitment, substantial commitment. And the fact is that 4 years is a little scarier to make that commitment than a 3-year term, rightly or not. To me, what it comes down to is it doesn't matter whether personally any of us favor a 3-year term or a 4-year term. It's how can we get good people involved in politics, encourage them to become involved and stay involved. And if the length of the term influences that, then I think this is worth debate. The only other thing I would say is, for me, the basis of democracy is the opportunity for voters to bring about change if they wish. I think every year is too quick. Every 2 years, I think, is too short a term. I think a 3-year term is reasonable. But again, it's an interesting debate, and I think it's worth having at UBCM, and I would look forward to hearing that discussion at that venue. So I will support this motion.
Thank you. Councillor
Fuller. Like everybody else, I'll support this going to the UBCM. It is a provincial issue, and the province was developed the community charter. I would have far rather seen issues of recall going to the provincial government for city officials, issues of changes to the charter for penalties against breaches of your duties as a councillor or as a mayor. I would much rather see more meat put on that than on terms. 4-year terms give people a sense of consistency. We have accomplished far more in 3 years. I've followed council since 2002 when I first ran. And we've accomplished more in 3 years than most of those councils ever did. And there's more we're going to accomplish in the 4th year. We did get a strategic plan. We've been moving forward on the recommendations. Some haven't gone through, some are going through, some are being adapted. That is the way of democracy. And 4 years gives a person consistency and will encourage more people to run. Far more people. Far more people of lower income means knowing that if they got elected and they could bring their views to the community, they would at least have 4 years of surety on being paid a decent wage for what is, yes, a part-time job. Always have said it's a part-time job. It allows them to get another part-time job. The amount of money we make on city council, and if you throw in the RDN to it, is far more than half of the population of Nanaimo is making working full-time. So, there's a lot of benefits to being on council. And part of that 4-year term is the amount of work you can get accomplished. As I say, we've accomplished far more in 3 years than, especially with all of the issues that have popped up. We've accomplished far more in 3 years, and we have 1 more year to go. So I would rather see us putting forward a motion to encourage recall be entered into the charter than this. But hey, I'll support it going to the UBCM. Why not?
Councillor Kipp.
Thank you. As I sit here, I think it's really important what I do, and it's huge for the city, and people watch us and stuff like that. 2011, 26.9% of the people voted, so 72 didn't care what we're doing. 2014, the election for 4 years, 34% 34.7, so 63% to 64% of the population didn't vote. The current election, 34.9% voted, 66% didn't vote. So to say that all these people have this lack of confidence in us, by not showing up, it gives me some faith that they think we're doing okay. In the referendum vote, 34% of the population voted, and 80% of those voted against it. But there was still 66% of the population out there that didn't even care that big, massive event center was going to get built or not. So to sit here and think that what we're doing is so important and 3 years is going to make it better and lack of confidence means we should get to the public more often, a whole bunch of them don't really care what we're doing. What they care about, I think, is if we start raising the rates, we start spending money like $8 million a year and not checking the prices like Core Review shows, or not getting on to $250 million of money going out for our infrastructure, this to change to 3 years? We've heard from the public, 34% of them. And I think 4 years creates a bit of stability in a council. If councils, you put aside some differences, but you don't put aside all your differences. That's obvious on this council. We're not putting aside our differences. When all the things that have happened go, everybody kumbayas will be better. But move it forward. Just move it forward to UBCM. Let them deal with it. If they deal to 3 years, fine. If they deal to 4, I'll be fine with it. But for me, 4 years of stability, 66% of our population doesn't really even care what we're doing. It's the same faces here all the time, the same people complaining all the time, or giving me positive reviews on all the stuff I'm bringing forward. And so for me, again, move it. Call the vote.
Councilor Brown.
Yeah, thanks for just letting me wrap this up. And thank you to my colleagues for supporting this and agreeing to take it forward to the UBCM. I don't know what the outcome will be. I suspect perhaps that it won't be, but it will be the basis for a good debate, and I think that's good and healthy for us to have those kinds of debates, especially in a bigger forum. You might be interested to know that there is a resolution going forward to look at recall for municipalities, so it doesn't really have to be either or. And I actually take a lot of sustenance from the people that do come out, the people that do have conversations on social media. I appreciate a lot of the comments that I get from people who just are sending emails. I enjoy responding to them. So this did not just rise out of my head. I was encouraged to do it, and I thank those people for encouraging me. And we'll just wait and see what happens. But I think it's a healthy, wise debate to have. And I'm glad we're having it, and I'm glad that our community is engaged to that degree that they've asked us to have this debate.
Thank you. Ms. Delgrove.
We need a seconder before we call the question.
Okay, so it's been seconded by Councillor Thorpe. I just wanted to ask the author of the author, Councillor Brennan, if she took into consideration. It's my understanding that over the last few days, I just read that the current government in Victoria has suggested that they want to realign the provincial election to 4 years, fixed term, and move it to the fall. So my challenge with that is that one of the reasons why we went to this in favor of the 4 years was to try to stagger federal, provincial, who were on fixed dates, and municipal to make it an alternate year. Now we're going to find ourselves every 12 years where we're going to have a headlong collision with the provincial election, both of them in the fall.
Well, I've certainly experienced that. I've campaigned on federal elections and provincial elections at the same time. We have it's a bit messy. I think that's one of the more wonderful things about politics. So I don't concern myself with that particularly.
Thank you. So it's, the motion's been moved and seconded. Councillor Kemp.
Yeah, I mean, if I hear from some people, I understand bringing stuff forward, but I don't know when I judge what is the volume of people. Why would I bring something forward? I mean, it's sometimes funny to me when I hear, well, I've been contacted. Drag racing is a big issue right now. I've been contacted about somebody on drag racing on Gabriel Island and noise and stuff, and I don't know how to react sometimes. Like, how many people do I need to have a complaint from to start to drive me to change? Collery Dam, when I see some of the people sitting here, thousands of people spoke up against it. Didn't make an impact on that one. Didn't make an impact on me. But here a few people are asking me to do something. A couple, I've only got 3 or 4 saying, oh yeah, support that councillor. And so I think this is, I don't think I can support it. I just don't think I'm going to support it now. I just don't think so. It just seems to be out of the blue and not enough support. I haven't heard much community debate on it or anything. We haven't had any here at the table and talked about or put it to a public and say, do you public want this? So for me, I'm not going to support it.
Okay, the last time you spoke, you asked to call a question, so I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Kipp opposed. Motion passes. All right, what's council's pleasure here? It's now, get her done? Okay. Councillor Armstrong, re-accessibility of...
Core service report. Have we had an updated core service report on where we're at, what's been implemented?
Councillor, if you can stick to the agenda, I'd appreciate it, please.
Well, core service report, number 14, number 15. 15.
Number 15, we're on 14, Councillor.
Where are we at? Oh, 14B, sorry. I didn't even see you there. I was handicapped.
Thank you. Councillor Armstrong, with respect to accessibility of all city-owned and operated facilities. Councillor Armstrong, can you, would like to, please.
To deliver a report detailing the accessibility of all city-owned and operated facilities, including buildings, parks, and trails, for accessibility to those identified as protected groups under human rights legislation.
It's been moved by Councillor Armstrong and seconded by Councillor Brennan. Discussion. Councillor Beswick.
Thank you. So just so that I'm clear, so this is restricted to public, city-owned and operated facilities and does not enter into the realm of future developments or BC building codes or okay, thanks.
Councillor Kipp.
Thank you. I appreciate the idea and the concept of it. I think most of our buildings built to a certain code now have some accessibility built into them. I like the concept of universal design, where there's flush door wells, wider doors, light switches and fixtures that meet for people. This is a very daunting report to bring forward. We have 150 outstanding reports right now, and I understand that there is some concern. I mean, I think it would be great for all of us again to get in a wheelchair and go roll around the pool, which I did one time a long time ago with the Accessible Nanaimo group, but I don't know what's happened to them. But this is a huge motion, a report detailing the accessibility of all. So that means we have to go out and measure all of the slopes and grades in our facilities to make sure they meet a 1 in 12 or a 1 in 16 ratio. That would mean all of our bathrooms and toilets would need to be measured to ensure that they meet code and current code standards. This would mean that they would, all the trails, and I understand some of the people that have had their concerns voiced. Being in a wheelchair or being a person with a physical disability is tough, and for the aged and those type of things. But our trails, I mean, are we looking to analyze the city director to deliver a report detailing the accessibility of all city-owned and operated facilities, including buildings, parks, and trails? Wow, that we have, I believe, this should include sidewalks, I guess, and we have 500 kilometers of trailway. We have, I mean, this is a daunting task. I would suggest that we ask for a report of how we can continue to meet the needs of accessibility. Like I say, even analyzing the parking spots at our Nanaimo Aquatic Center, they're on the slope. there's a curb, you have to go down below or down up. The design of it is sometimes the flaw, is the actual design. I mean, I've seen, a bathroom, instead of just putting a 3-foot 6-inch door in to leave the whole bathroom, we'll put a corridor with a panel and a 3-foot door and have people hard to get through. So the design is part of the flaw here. The actual designing, people's ability to design. So this, I can't support this without knowing a cost from staff to deliver the report, or to find out how much it would cost to analyze this. Who's going to do this work? Who's going to measure every arena, every swimming pool, every locker room, every trail, every building, every operating facility? I mean, I had to design a $14,000 wheelchair accessible place in a RCMP private drug squad building because it meet the code, and no one in that squad or no one ever entered that room was disabled, but it had to be done by code. So this one is, to me, is a hugely daunting task, hugely daunting. And I can't get a report from a year ago on just some soil. I think this would take an extraordinary amount of money, a whole bunch of more consultants. I mean, think of that. We have $3 billion worth of assets, which I suggest $1 billion worth of buildings and trails and roads and that. And to say how every one of them is accessible, Mount Benson's not accessible right now, I'll tell you that, to people with physical disabilities. And some things aren't accessible. And there's a human right to make that. So what we have to do is push for the best things we have now to make some of our facilities this way, and to turn towards universal design. So I can't support an open-ended thing like this. I understand what it's trying to accomplish. I understand the need for it. I understand the ideas behind it. But I'm not certain it is what will it facilitate? It might show us that we need to spend an extra $1 million right now on facilities, which maybe should have been done by every department by now. Every department should have a plan to make their building accessible. That's what this says. So, thank you. I appreciate it coming forward, though.
Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I appreciate the intent of this motion, but I am really troubled with the scope of it in terms of its drain on staff resources. And for me, I'm afraid it's just going to tell us basically what we already know, that we have facilities that are fairly well accessible, some that are semi-accessible, and some that are not accessible. And for the amount of time and money it would take to bring us all of that detailed information, I'm not really sure I understand the point of it. I think as we build new facilities and renovate existing facilities, this council is very aware of the need for improving accessibility, and we've been trying to do that, and we'll continue to do that. But to spend all of this time just simply putting together an inventory of what we have, I'm afraid I just don't see the value of it. So I don't think I'll be able to support it. Thank you.
Councillor Armstrong.
Or maybe if the word was changed to legally mandated accessibility, like, for instance, City Hall doesn't have TTY, and that's been legally mandated since 1995, and we still don't have it. Would that be more helpful? Like, that's what I'm more looking for, like, in your main buildings. Like, I'm not necessarily talking about parks and trails, but the stuff that is legally mandated by law, where if we don't have it, we open ourselves up to, fines if a complaint is lodged.
So are you suggesting a modification to the motion?
Like, what if it was like legally mandated
Where would you put that?
accessible?
What would you change?
The council directs staff to deliver a report detailing the accessibility of the legally mandated buildings or that fall under what would be human rights, or is it accessibility? I can work on it. I can work on it for future if it gets voted down.
Okay. Great, thank you. Councillor Hong.
Thank you. I think the information, we should have the information anyways. I think we had a great discussion about GIS. And I think this is one of the great things about GIS, and this should be a layer on our GIS platform. where every organization comes and gives the information and then goes on the computer. I go into my phone, I layer it for all my accessibility issues. So having information, I think when we had this GIS report, that we had lots of good data. It was just implementing the data and using the software that we had. So it might be there. We might already have the data. Like, have we even asked staff to see what they know? Because they might know it already. So the wording is a little different, but delivering a detailed report, I think maybe we should get a staff summary is better, where we're not saying go measure 500 kilometers of trail and tell me which ones. That seems a little ridiculous. We know what parks are not accessible. We know which ones you just look at it and the staff know. The people that maintain the parks know what's accessible and what's not accessible. So it might not be that difficult, but to put it down on a map and saying red, not accessible, green, accessible, yellow, hey, we're working on it, park accessible, is I think what we should have anyways, and that should be put into our GIS program and whatever we have once we implement that. So I'm all for information, as long as we use that information in a way that's going to help the public. I don't mind it, but I think it's just the wording of this motion right now needs some work. That's my concern. I support it, but I don't know if I can support the wording.
Okay. Councillor Yoakum.
Thank you. I definitely be supporting the motion. My late mom was disabled, so lived a learning experience when mom was here, but also, as we all have people in our world that have invisible disabilities. I think, do we all know we have the dollars today for this? Absolutely not. But we got to lead and not wait for what others are doing. We can take a lead on this initiative. I think we should have the report. I think it's a great conversation. And I also believe that with the earlier conversation, which is important and the province will decide, I do think it's done because some may or may not like or want some of us here. But I think in the future, when we're going to be doing last-minute motions for the UBCM, which is already past the deadline, is to we should be advocating the provincial government on these type of initiatives, on these type of things for provincial dollars. And we have to go over and beyond, because people in these situations, these beautiful people, deserve it and deserve us to do the best we can to make sure there's accessibility for all. So I think it's a good motion to get started, Councillor Armstrong, and I'll be supporting the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fuller.
As it stands, I'm not going to support the motion. I do agree with Councillor Yoakum. We do need to go over and beyond. We do need to do better. Councillor Hong is right in that some of this information may be accessible already. The way the motion is worded, and I believe Councillor Armstrong is willing to change that, is just a bit much. Deliver a report detailing the accessibility of all city-owned and operated facilities, including parks and trails, for accessibility to those identified. Could this mean in the future we don't develop parks because they're not accessible because of the terrain? And I don't see that as being the intent of the motion, but it's just way too broad. And we all know we can do better. We put a parking spot up at Colliery Dam and it turned out not to be wide enough. That was kind of silly, but we're learning. And I believe that is going to be rectified, as will any other parking spots in the community, because we've made that mistake, so we learn from it. I do believe we need more information on what we're doing as a city to promote accessibility. And I think this motion, if it's reworded, could do that. So I won't support the current motion as it stands. If something is brought forward at a later date amended, I will support that.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan.
Thanks. I think that the motion is very ambitious, and I don't think that it's too big a job, but I do think that I'm getting the sense that there is some reluctance to have as broad a study as this. So I think that it needs some work, and I wonder if we want to refer this issue to a committee or a task force and ask them to bring information back to us on accessibility in Nanaimo's public buildings and trails and parks, and bring us recommendations on how we can improve things. I think that's the beginning of the bigger one. And to say, well, we don't have the money at this time, well, sure we do. We just have to have a will, and we can do that. We're entering into a new budget session, so we could accommodate the larger one, but I'm wondering if we need to start smaller to work on developing a larger piece of work. And so that's my recommendation, would be to refer it to a committee, and we have the community vitality, which is what is it, Councillor Fuller? Your culture, heritage, and social planning. So that would be a good fit for it. There's other committees that would also be a good fit, but that one seems pretty reasonable to me. And I'd like to see lots of stuff come out of that committee, or looking at this question of measuring accessibility in Nanaimo, where we fall short, where we exceed, those kinds of things. I'd love to know that. I think we have the money to find that out. And I don't want to look someone in the eye who has a disability, who finds Nanaimo difficult to maneuver in, and say, you know, we just didn't have the money this year. We do. So whatever way we go on this, I support it, but I really think at this point, narrow it down, get some facts and recommendations, and then move forward to a bigger plan.
Thank you. Mr. McCrae wants to weigh in. Mr. Cray.
Yes, through your worship, just some discussions here. My understanding is, in speaking with the CAO, that a report was already prepared last year that detailed some of these things. So perhaps this could be put on hold until the CAO return to follow up on this process. It's just a recommendation from staff.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Armstrong.
Yeah, I do have a copy of the report that was done, which outlines some of the stuff, but is missing some as well. I'm willing to withdraw the motion at this time to work with staff to redo it, or make a motion that we put it to a committee to look at as well, or just maybe withdraw it for now and rework it.
So if you're going to withdraw, then we'll consider that one.
Yeah, I'll withdraw it with
another motion. Then
I'll make a motion to withdraw that motion and then bring it back after working with staff to reassess which we want to go, and also I will work with those that have brought forward the issue to me to see which areas they would like specified.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so the motion's withdrawn.
Thank you.
Motion's withdrawn, Councillor. Can we move on?
Some information out to council on a program the provincial government has called Accessibility 2024, and it outlines the progressive steps and building blocks to do this. The province has been working on it since 2014, and it talks about all of the initiatives it's doing. So I did send that out for council just now, and it's on there. And I guess one of the key things is, when you talk about accessibility, inclusive government, accessible service delivery, accessible internet, accessible built environment, accessible housing, accessible transportation, income support, employment, financial security, inclusive committees and communities, emergency preparedness. Those are the things that will break down the barriers for people with physical disabilities. And it's been in process for 2 years. There's updates, and I sent council the provincial websites on it. And there's a lot of information there on how we're trying to make BC more accessible in a 10-year plan. Thank you.
Thank
Sorry
you
for interrupting.
Thank you. And the next item is actually question period. However, Councillor Kipp, you brought up something with respect to item 15, core services review report.
Have we had an update on the core review, of where we are on our revisions to the core review and its recommendations? And and when we're going to finish the core review, because I think we've only done about half the corporation. So I'd like to know if one's coming forward eventually or something. That's all. Just one.
Mr. McRae.
Yes, through your worship, I'll provide an update to council shortly.
Thank you.
Thank you. That moves us into question period. Agenda items only, please.
I'm getting feedback. My name is Bill Manners from Nanaimo. The system that I'm using to hear you folks discuss things tonight really help. My question is, can we get the same system set up at the SARC building so I can hear the meetings there? When I attend them, I can hear about 3 or 4 of you.
What system is this, sir?
Getting a lot of feedback. What it is it's a microphone system that is set up through everything that works here so I can hear each of you speak. Without it, with my hearing aids, there's a lot of you that I can't hear.
Thank you, sir. So that's fed through our audio system?
Yes.
Oh, great. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Can we click it later on?
Well, at this particular point, I would say no, but I'm not an expert. I would say the reason why is because each one of our microphones are individual here, as opposed to there, where there's single microphones and collector microphones. But we can certainly, I'm not sure if we can get an answer to that or not, because I'm sure that the experts on that are not in the room tonight. Thank you. Can we take that back, Mr. McRae?
Yes, your worship. I've heard the comments from Mr. Manners there. I'll bring it back to staff for review.
Thank you.
Mayor McKay.
Councillor Brennan.
I wonder if we could bring back the meetings back to this building, and that would deal with that issue. The committee of the whole meetings, they just sort of zipped off over to the SARC building, and it isn't adequate for lots of things, and I would like to see the committee of the whole brought back here.
Thank you. I would suggest you bring forward a motion.
Okay, I will.
Thank you.
But it was just in response to the request for better hearing.
Thank you. Councillor Bestwick.
We do have a similar system at the Regional District of Nanaimo, where their hearing impaired, if you will, has some, and I'm not saying about people in the audience, but I know there's a system there for people at the table that have hearing challenges, that have an upgraded headphone assistance. So maybe there is something that we can talk to the Regional District about on how that works, like what the system is, and if it's compatible for here or something. So hopefully we'll find that out.
Thank you. Sir.
Fred Taylor of Nanaimo. In regards to Councillor Armstrong's notice of motion, could there be a direction to staff that access demands through your building code, etc., must take place? Or, in other words, something on each development notice or building notice permits be a statement that everything's been checked and passed to the demands of access, etc.?
I'm going to let Councillor Armstrong.
The reason I pointed that out.
No, sir. We're going to answer your question. So I'm going to let Councillor Armstrong answer the question, but I don't believe that hers was intended to deal with development projects, but rather the city-owned facilities. Am I correct, Councillor Armstrong?
Excuse me just for a minute, Councillor Armstrong. My opinion would be to start right now with anything happening from now on, and then, as you've heard, is fairly expensive to go into the past to check things out.
May I answer? My understanding, Mr. Taylor, from what I got from city staff, is that any new builds do comply. It's when we're doing the new builds. And I'm talking only of city-owned properties. Just a second, I'm just going to bring it up here. It's on my thing here.
While other properties that they inspect, I'm even aware of one that was a big problem.
I'll just, for planning, the official community plan supports the creation of disabled-friendly public spaces and facilities. All new construction is reviewed to ensure compliance with the accessibility requirements of the British Columbia Building Code. If an existing building is undergoing a change of use, like a house to an office, the accessibility requirements of the BCBC are required to be met whenever possible. The City of Nanaimo Development Parking Regulations Bylaw requires that new developments include accessible parking and that those stalls be properly identified and located near the building entrance. So all new builds are looked after, and when they're doing improvements, it's my understanding that they're working with that. One other thing it says, in 2013, the addition of MOAS, I don't know what that is. We updated several items to improve accessibility on our sidewalk networks, including new curb drops, standard with scoring to reduce grades, ongoing programs to replace push buttons for traffic. So I think there is a lot of work being done. It just, I would like to see, like we mentioned, better tracking for us so that we can answer those questions for you.
I'm aware of a recent building inspection pass that had stairs, different heights, and it cost the company a lot of money, insurance claim, because stairs were past different heights. And that's why I'm suggesting start now that no variations or variances or anything else from the code, because I'm aware of one very popular place that had different heights of each stair. And
Okay.
no way.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn? It'll be a little quicker on the draw, sir. Put your hearing aid in.
I will. I'll get my glasses too. Don Bonner from Nanaimo. My question is regarding correspondence 11A. The correspondence in particular refers to a petition, and in that petition it refers to a video that was taken, and I believe that video was taken in an in-camera meeting. Do you know if that's the case?
It was an in-camera meeting, yes, sir.
Okay. What is the council's policy regarding filming using personal or cell phones to record information meetings that are held in camera? Anybody know? What page is this on?
This is the correspondence with respect to the
Zoe Todd?
petition. Zoe Todd.
Does it have a page?
Oh. I think I just put mine away. Hang on, I'll find it.
58 of your agenda.
In answer to your question, the City of Nanaimo used to record their in-camera meetings, and they would record via a tape recorder, an actual cassette tape recorder. And in about July of 2015, Mr. Robert Fuller asked that all meetings be recorded, including in camera. The purpose of that tape recording was to have a tape available to the clerks, and that tape would be destroyed or taped over once the minutes of the meeting had been adopted, to ensure the accuracy of the minutes of the meeting. So I believe it was around September or October of 2015, the staff report came back with respect to the taping of in-camera minutes or in-camera meetings, and this council elected not to tape the in-camera meetings.
So the CAO, did she have permission to record that meeting? Self-protection.
I'm not going to comment, sir.
So,
Mr. McRae wishes to speak.
Just, yes, through your worship, just to be very cognizant to council that you're walking a fine line here. And I think we all need to be very aware of that. I'm not going to tell council what to do. I'm giving advice, which is this conversation is walking a very fine line, and council should be aware of the answers that they give. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
I'm not particularly interested in making you walk a fine line. Has any repercussions come forward regarding that video that was put on YouTube, to your knowledge?
No comment, sir.
Okay. Oh gosh, I'm starting to run out of questions. I don't think you're going to comment on them any. I guess I finish up with one question. Well, two, if I may. Councillor Kip, are you on Facebook? You mentioned it earlier.
I creep Facebook.
Okay. If you want, there is approximately 8,000 people signed up to 3 different groups: so Better Nanaimo, Nanaimo Talk, and Gordon Fuller's Amusing page. And you'd be more than welcome to find out what the population of Nanaimo is talking about on there. It'd be my pleasure to invite you in.
Oh, I watch your website, trust me.
Thanks.
I read it. I read a lot of it.
Finally, the last question, Councillor Beswick. You mentioned the silly season. I'm not sure you speak for the rest of the council, but are we to assume there that as of January 1st, you will be voting for things that make sure you get votes in the next coming election?
Typically, the year of an election is much often referred to as silly season. And so I was making an offhanded comment about typically what takes place in an election cycle year. Will I be taking my duties and responsibilities less serious, to your question, in the election year? No, I'll take them more serious.
Actually, the question was, will you be voting for things that make
No.
sure you get votes?
I never vote for things to get votes.
Right, that's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Don't go away. I got Councillor Fuller.
I'm glad you mentioned those 3 Facebook groups. You're aware that only one of those 3 actually wants people to become members by filling out a questionnaire? You are aware of that, are you not?
Gentlemen, I think we've gone way off of the topic here tonight.
He brought it up.
No, actually, and with all due respect to council, I think this is the time where the people of the citizens of Nanaimo have an opportunity to ask questions of council. If council wants to start asking questions of us, we should do it at a different venue.
Well, the challenge here is, sir, that the items that we're now discussing are nowhere near the agenda.
Yeah.
They're not on the agenda tonight.
I agree, 100%. Great, I'm done.
Councillor Kipp.
Yeah, Mr. Bonner, about the silly season. A few years back, a couple of terms ago, I found that in August the committees wouldn't meet, and so September, because an election was coming, there was no real incentive to keep the committee going, and then, in November, and it was just fade around July or June. So 4 and 5 months before the new term starts in December. So I actually put forward a motion that the meetings and the people would extend to March after the election. So there would be continuity in the committees, and those committees would continue. And so silly season wouldn't affect the public input of our committees during that election time when everybody was trying to make friends and gain votes. I always do that before an election. I always make a lot of friends before. But so we tried to keep the continuity of public input. I made a motion for it. We extended them back to March. This council never set the committees for months, chose not to do it. It was the mayor's prerogative to pick committees, and that didn't happen for months. So even though we had a bylaw to keep public input going in this, what I refer to as silly season, where all the electoral gets going, we tried to keep community input going, and that failed. And so the silly season does exist, and the questions get harder, and people do start to sort of do everything for votes. They'll vote for everybody and everything. At one moment, they'll want people locked up. At the next moment, they'll want them to have a booth at the event. It's just to get votes, and that's politics. So I appreciate your thing. Our in-camera, there's no real rules to recording our in-camera. I can record things for my own benefit, how I use them and send them out. And that particular one you're talking about, I say it's self-protection. Because it had happened before without self-protection. I take pictures.
All right, then.
Motion to adjourn?
I was done a while ago, so.
Thank you.
I know that.
Motion to adjourn, seconded by Councillor Hong. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.